there is a sign-up sheet at the front here. There's also a specific public hearing for the FAR ratio, and there's a separate sign-up sheet to speak to that issue. So you can sign up for both or one or either, however you'd like to do that. There'll be two separate times for one for all general comment and the other for the FAR. We want to acknowledge staff work in preparation for tonight's meeting. Their insights are invaluable to each topic of town business, and appreciate our town manager, Natasha Tucker, as we operate under the council manager form of government. Natasha handles daily operations and department administration, while our town council provides direction and authorizes policy in accordance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia and our town charter. While each council member has the ultimate responsibility to contribute and vote distinctly, the council does work as a body, duly elected to serve responsibly and ethically the citizens of Colonial Beach. Participation of each member contributes to effective leadership, and collaboration is key to productivity in local government. Let's engage in constructive discussion, remain open to different perspectives, and work together for effective resolutions. And finally, I remind everyone that the town council meetings are formal proceedings and are recorded. And with that, I will call the regular town council meeting for June on the 18th at 6:01 p.m. to order. Will you please join me in standing for a moment of silence, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, next up is our roll call of members. All members are present. I do not have any additions to the agenda tonight. Is there approval of the agenda as written? Motion?
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion? All right, we're just all getting rolling here. All right, all in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. All right, moving right along, there is the consent agenda. We have approval of the March 15th minutes and a resolution for the authorization of signature cards on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Yes, Mr. Williams?
I found something in the minutes that needs to be corrected. Under, I guess these were 2023 minutes. The ordinance 743 amends chapter 12, garbage and trash for the town of Colonial Beach ordinance. Under it states in there, Dr. Sullivan and Mr. Williams stated they disagreed and believed that the comment should be read. That was talking about public comments. But then under the vote, it says, Mayor Schick called for a vote. Ms. Roberson, Mr. Wood, and Mr. Monicure voted aye. Dr. Sullivan, Mr. Allison, and Mayor Schick voted nay. Motion failed, but it doesn't mention my vote in there.
Oh, okay.
So I'm assuming I voted for that. I'd have to go back and actually watch the meeting,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure I did.
Go back and put that in. Yeah, that's fine. Good catch.
And then I guess also question about the signature. I've had some constituents ask about this signature card thing. Could somebody kind of just give us a brief overview of that? Why the mayor and the vice mayor and stuff sign off on financial approvals and stuff?
You can go. We've had the mayor and vice mayor on there pretty much since I've been here. They're only used in case there's no staff available. We have run into instances where when we did not have the mayor or vice mayor on there, we had no staff there due to vacations or in conferences or in classes. And we need those other signatures on there in order to get that third signature on a school check. All of our checks are done electronic signature now, but it's the school. They want 3 signatures on there. One of them is a town official. So we've added the mayor and vice mayor in case staff is not available.
Okay. I'm assuming it's not very common since India
No,
has been going
not
for
very
a few
common at
years
all.
now.
Since I've been here, I think it's happened once or twice.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Great. All right, next up is our council member announcements, and I will start with Mr. Wood.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. Colonial Beach Police Department just wants to remind you, there will not be a neighborhood watch meeting this month. The meetings are going to resume in July, and that's it for the police department. The Planning Commission, at the June 12th meeting, we held a work session to hear from citizens and business owners about parking standards in the zoning ordinance, specifically amendments that were proposed in 2024. It was a great discussion. A representative of the Economic Development Committee was there and gave us some outstanding insight, as well as one business owner in town. And I think there's going to be a lot, not only good discussion, but good things that will come from that. The deadline to renew short-term rental permits for the 2025-26 permit year was May 1st. CDs issued approximately 112 short-term rental permits. There are approximately 26 individuals who operated an STR in 24-25 who've not renewed their permits. Staff has been contacting them to advise they're late. All short-term rentals must have an STR permit and a current business license to operate. You need to take care of those now. Staff will be issuing notices of violations to those who are not in compliance. And the Director of Community Development and Zoning is pleased to announce we've hired a new planner for the department whose concentration will be for community enhancement and planning. John Saude has over 20 years of experience in development and review-related work. He began on Monday, and he's hit the ground running. I met with him today. He's a sharp guy. We're lucky to have him. That's it.
Mr. Larson?
All right, a series of reminders of things we've talked about before, but just so you know, utility bills are out there. They are due on July the 1st. Penalties and interest apply starting August the 1st. Your golf carts have to have a current year sticker on them. They will ticket you if you don't. The parking system for other vehicles is driven off of your tag number, your license plate number on your car. If you pay taxes and you'll be in the system with that tag number unless you change it for some reason. For example, I just bought antique tags for my VW bus, right? The tag number is going to change. I have to contact the finance department so that if I park it on the street, I don't get a ticket. What else? If you're having financial difficulties, any struggles getting your bills paid, please contact the finance department. They will work with you. Don't just go delinquent on your bills without that contact, though. And that's all I have.
Mr. Williams?
Oh, good evening, everybody. Some updates from the schools. I had a meeting, I think last week, with Dr. Otto and talked about the schools and various things. And one of the things I mentioned was I know he does a pretty thorough updates, so I didn't want to duplicate. He said no worries about duplicating. So I'll just do some of my highlights from the meeting, and if he duplicates, then, apologize for that. But attended their meeting on Wednesday, and some of the highlights for that is the fiscal year 25-26 budget amendments. They had approved 2 different amendments. One was for $459,000 for operation funds, and another was a $231,000 for their fiscal 25 budget, I believe. And one of the things to note there was the local composite index increased, and the town's share for that was an additional $80,000. I believe that's been paid, but there is another balance that will be due, I think for this coming year, it will be another $40,000. They mentioned that Dr. Wright is the new director of the Governor's School. As a council liaison, I've mentioned to them that we passed our budget, funded the schools, but only the required amount. We didn't fund the additional 2 positions they requested. Also mentioned that I talked to the superintendent about possible ways to help with the perception of, especially during budget season, where certain community members don't necessarily think the schools are important or blame the schools for our budget woes. So I mentioned to him of possible ways to help bridge that gap in between with the community and the schools. They mentioned there's 72 students in summer school. They discussed some of their policies and perhaps changing some policies. It's around, I think it was around testing. Elementary school now has a card reader. They did mention chronic absenteeism is slightly higher for the elementary school and slightly lower for the high school. They mentioned the mandate to remove artificial ingredients from the foods from the cafeteria by 2027, so that's something they have to work on. They said the budget is on track for the next fiscal year, and also different testing requirements by the state were also discussed. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grandstaff?
Good evening, everyone. The last EDC meeting, I was on travel for that, so I will be relaying the report I requested from Kelly Woods Vaughn, the co-chair. The meeting was held on June 10th, and the main focus was centered around Article 13 parking, and Nigel Long and Vicky Luna from the Planning Commission attended that meeting. Kelly also attended the Planning Commission and shared many of the discussion points from last year's EDC review of Article 13 on parking. She has also submitted notes to Darla for further discussion around that. The second part of their meeting centered around updates by the chamber and also creating plans for their business appreciation breakfast. So that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Sanford?
All right, good evening, everyone. First, I want to start by saying thanks to everyone who came out to the Potomac River Festival over the weekend, especially shout out to Public Works for all their great work with the parades. I saw them running around and doing a bunch of stuff, especially shout out to Chris for helping push my golf cart since it's electric and it decided to be difficult during the parade. Some upcoming events. Tomorrow is Juneteenth, so there's the 4th annual Juneteenth Freedom Day event on Town Hill from 11 to 4. Celebrate Freedom Day with food, music, and activities, again on Town Hill. Sunday, there's also the Colonial Beach Triathlon that will be starting at 6:30 a.m., so expect to see a bunch of runners and bikers and swimmers out there. On July 3rd, which is a Thursday, there will be our 4th of July fireworks show, which will start after dark. Fireworks will be shown from the town pier and can be seen after dark from locations along the Potomac. Friday, July 11th, there's also a coffee walk at 8 a.m. starting at Colonial Buzz, which is at 215 Washington Avenue. There's also a sip and stroll that Friday evening from 6 to 9 along downtown Colonial Beach. And just a reminder again that it is summer season, so there are no dogs permitted on the beach or boardwalk. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Allison?
Good evening, everybody. Short and sweet for me tonight. Like Ms. Sanford said, kudos to Public Works. They had a lot of festival prep and a lot of festival cleanup, so great job to them on that. Just a kudos shout out to my niece, Olivia Cook. She won the Miss Colonial Beach pageant. So, and I had the pleasure of driving her in the parade, so that was fun. So that's all I have tonight.
Very proud of her. So to echo the last two, I also just want to say what a great festival weekend it was. I know the pending thunderstorms had people somewhat in a panic on a lot of different aspects of the weekend, but it all pulled off really well, and I know that takes a lot of coordination, including even the Father's Day car show on Sunday. Beautiful turnout, really, and even though it started to, get drizzly and all of that. I want to let people know that there is a vacation Bible school at the Colonial Beach Baptist Church next week after work, if anybody's interested in that. We also had a very successful ribbon cutting for the Sandlot, the new T-ball softball field at the community center, and 2 different T-ball teams played, and it was adorable. And it is now open and ready. Now, the bases that they have for Little League are very nice, and but they slide in and out. So they do pull those up so that they are Little League bases, but you can just put down the little flat bases if you want to go over there and pitch a ball around and hang out. Also, we had a very successful Save the Bay Day. Over 900 pounds of trash was picked up, and we were joined by the director of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and also Congressman Whitman. And they did go pick up trash on Beach Avenue, actually, all the way down Beach Avenue. And I guess I'll see everybody tomorrow at the Juneteenth event on Town Hill. That's all I have. Next up is our town manager update.
We'll begin the updates with an update from John Simmons of Bowden, followed by my updates.
You've gotten pretty good at fixing that, by the way.
I've got a little practice in. How's that?
There you go.
All right, there we go. So, pretty short and sweet this month. Next page, please. So, we'll stop here. Obviously, you all know now that this is our daily flow chart. You can see that there were 3 significant rain events in the month. That did cause some treatment issues as far as disinfection, like especially on the 29th, that flow comes in, it registers at 1 million for the day. But what happens is that 1 million gallons of flow comes through that plant in about 4 hours during a rain event. A plant is designed for 2 million over a 24-hour period. And when we have these rain events, it rushes through much quicker than what it's designed to. So keep that in mind, those high spikes as we go through the report. Next page, please. So all significant parameters did pass for the month, the ammonia, BOD5, TSS. So down a little bit further there for the fecal coliform and Entero, we did have violations of the permit limit for Entero is 35. We come in at 65 for the month. The fecal coliform is 200. Or it came in at 80. So not so bad, not real high, but still higher than what we want to see. The only way we're going to solve that is to continue to eliminate the I&I issues that we have during the rain events. Next page, please. And goes down to the nitrogen and phosphorus. We're still having nitrogen higher than what the WQIF grant allows us to have, what we are within our general permit limits there. There's the SCADA for the sand filters being finished up. We're kind of fine tuning those sand filters to try to get that nitrate level down to where it needs to be. We have also started this week using another chemical that goes along with the process of the sand filter. And once we get that dialed in, we'll be able to trend what type of usage we're going to have there and what that cost is going to be. But I believe we've already got that figured out with Chris and his budget. Next page. So there's some of the operational notes. That ChemScan is really part of the sand filter. There was some training done on that once the system was put back in place. Lord and Company, as you know, who's doing the SCADA work at the plant, has been at the plant, last month and this month already. We're still having some failures with the SCADA after storm events, things of that nature. As you see down a little bit further, We had multiple events of heavy rainstorms that, triggered some surge issues, causing PLC issues where the PLC loses communication with the equipment. And there were a couple overflow events that were basically prevented because of having the response times and people there on staff. Lord & Company yesterday found another component in the SCADA that they had to replace due to its age, and it did fail during the last rain events with the storm over the weekend. So we really think that that was probably intermittently causing some issues. It just took it to fail completely before they realized what that was. So we're hoping that's going to solve a lot of these intermittent issues we're having during the rain events. Other than that, the wet weather PCB samples were collected for the year. That's a yearly requirement. Other than that, all samples collected, all reports were turned in, and that really sums up everything for the month. Any questions?
Hi, John, how you doing today?
Doing great, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. When we get those higher readings, there's no real danger to our, the quality of the water that we're sending out?
No, because, during those rain events, you're also getting high levels in the river because of the washout from farms and things like that on the river. Everybody knows that's a huge topic here on the Potomac. So as far as the scheme of things, we're adding, but it's going on down the river, and it's really not nearly as bad as what some of the farms and things around here are releasing, especially other wastewater plants. I take it serious. I don't like to have any elevated numbers, but it's not so much you can do to prevent it when the flow's coming, because what happens, the UV disinfection system is designed, it's flow-based. And when you have to have what they can call contact time for disinfection. It has to spend a certain amount of time in that UV channel to be properly disinfected. So when the flow's going through there too fast, it doesn't allow the proper contact time for complete disinfection. And that's really what we have going on. And the only way to solve it is to slow the water down. And once we continue to get some of these problems fixed in the collection system, that will go away. And we do a pretty good job of managing that. We haven't had very many violations because of it, but that storm event particularly, it just come all at once. It was a lot of rain at one time, and the flow, we had to turn the flow up high enough to keep from having overflows in the headworks and such, so it just sends the water through that UV chamber too fast. And it's better to have that than it is to have an overflow of raw discharge,
And I guess finally, the idea of having to man the plant 24/7. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I'm going to ask you to look at your crystal ball.
Right.
And see how long do you think we're going to have to man that plant 24/7?
Ultimately, it is the town's decision as to how we staff that plant, but with my professional opinion,
Right.
as many times as what we have to deal with this in the middle of the night and late or early in the morning, I mean, just Sunday morning at 5 a.m., my phone was ringing, and we had to go to the plant. Chris had to pull some of his staff. Not only were they down here dealing with the festival, they had to come back to the wastewater plant so we can initiate bypasses because of the PLC failure. And without having people available, you're going to have overflows. So I would say if the work that's been done on the SCADA this week, if we really have nailed down what's causing these issues, then it could be pretty soon. But what we need is we need some time. We need at least time to go through a couple weather events and not have issues, because we know it's being caused when it rains. We know it's happening. It's got something to do with the surges in the power, with the power outages. So once we know that this problem is going to go away and we can rely on that system, then we can go back to the 16-hour shifts. And Chris is staying on top of it. He's aware every time it happens. Every time it goes out, he automatically gets a phone call just as well as I do. So there's nothing happening over there that your public works doesn't know about. So as soon as he knows that those issues are going away, he would make the right decision as to what to do with the schedule.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Grandstaff?
John, I want to clarify, I may have missed it, but just remind me, back on, I guess it was in May, you had stated the sludge machine needed to be relocated. Was that done?
Which
So-
one?
The sludge machine?
The sludge press, because I know
So-
you and I had talked about the sludge pumps, the return
Right.
pumps, and then also the press. The press has not had its refurbished completed. We're still having a difficult time getting the vendor to respond. We have our attorneys involved in that, and one way or another, we will get that worked out. But as far as the return pumps and things that you and I were discussing, they have been fixed.
Okay. And May 21st, the valves that were repaired, are they still holding steady and doing okay?
The clarifier valves,
yeah.
see, we didn't actually complete the repair. The vendor came to try to do the repair. They weren't the right size. Now there needs to be a retrofit done to the piping to make the valves fit because the size valve is no longer made. Chris is working with his vendor to get that accomplished, and that's something that we're hoping to do pretty soon.
Okay. And I know you just stated that because you need more time to go through more heavy rains and different weather conditions to assess when you can back off of 24/7 monitoring. Typically, June to November is like hurricane heavy season. So do you think by November, when it tapered off, you'll get a better idea, or you would have to go further than that?
I would love to see no bad weather events, but I feel like we are. And I think by the end of the summer, by the end of, probably July going into August, we're gonna know how things are gonna look moving for that. I hope it doesn't happen that way, but it looks like it is. So I think we're gonna get a lot of experience with what it's gonna do in the weather.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes,
That's it.
ma'am.
Yes, Mr. Ryan?
Kind of along that same vein, the inflow and infiltration issue, where are we on that?
We're still doing the smoke testing now. We're still waiting for some approvals through DEQ to be able to start the camera work. Once we start the camera work, we would identify what types of repairs are needed in the ground as to whether or not it's going to need a full pipe replacement, CIPP lining, or we could just do a spot repair.
Okay. Is there a plan to get council a more thorough update on all that
Oh,
soon?
absolutely. Once everything comes in and we know exactly how it's going to fall, we plan to give a proper update.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So far with the smoke testing, have you seen a lot of inflow issues? And the inflow is when people's homes are directly connected to the sewer plant from their storm water, not just their toilet plumbing.
Right, so we have found some houses with gutters attached to the system. We, most of what we're finding really is just people's clean outs in their yards. People are, breaking the tops of the clean outs with maybe mowers or hammers, to where their yard will drain into that pipe instead of collecting water there. And we have found a significant amount of that. Otherwise, it's really just been some ditches that are smoking, some, manhole repairs that are needed to be done. But a big part of the problem in town is the clean outs in people's yards that are below grade, that have been broken, and the water's running straight into them.
Do those get addressed when you're doing the smoke testing? Like, do you go to the homeowner, or what's the next step in addressing the inflow issues?
What we're doing is we're putting flags on it, and so when they come home, they will see it. They'll know that we've been there. But what that's probably gonna take is something from the council to enforce, to be able to have an enforceable action to have that repaired.
Is that something we need to tackle in the next quarter?
I would like to see it done sooner than later. I know that's really something we would have to discuss with the town manager. Chris and I have a good bit of data now that we could start issuing, letters, notices, whatever process you seem to take. But, in my experience, I've dealt with this quite a bit throughout the Commonwealth. So it's really going to start with, something being adopted or however to enforce that.
Okay. And when I visited the plant, there was a tank that was out to be repaired, like it was emptied at that time. Is it repaired now and back in service, or?
I'm not sure which tank you're referring to, which,
Yep,
yeah, we've got the clarifier back online.
okay.
And what we do is we swap those, because sometimes we can just have one when we have low flows, and we'll keep one empty to, reduce the impact of a rain event. So we do kind of swap those back and forth. So I know that, you come over, you're pretty familiar with the facility. So when you would come next time, it's possible you would see the next one empty. So we do that as a process.
Yeah, it was good to see the bottom of it, actually, and all
Yeah.
cleaned out and all
That's a good
that.
thing, is when you can
Yeah.
see the bottoms of tanks,
Yeah.
yes.
That was good. Okay. I think, we should, just wanted to make sure we're kind of staying abreast of the inflow issues and what policy, items need to be on our work plan as a council to continue to make progress on this.
Right. It's a constant, conversation with us. We discuss it a lot, and it's a matter of now with the data that we have, taking the next step, and, we'll all work together to get you guys what we need from you.
One last is twofold. Kudos on bullet point number 4 for getting your permit renewal completed with King George. And with that being said, how often because
To have to redo the renewal, you know,
and sludge,
at that landfill, it could be either 2 years or 5. It's 3 years at the King George, and they're actually talking about increasing the cost or raising their prices to accept that sludge. That's something that we're gonna try to negotiate with them and work through, but it's just another person increasing pricing on us, and that's something that it's happening on a regular basis now, and they're the next ones trying to do it.
how often is it being done?
With the landfill, this is the first time I know
First
of it
time.
being done here.
All right, that's it, seriously.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Anybody else? All right, I'm sure we'll have more questions as we get further down the
I think
agenda.
So, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Town Council, members in the audience. We have 3 new hires for the month of June. As Councilman Rick mentioned, our Planning and Zoning Department has hired a code enforcement officer, Mr. John Saudi. John is a native to King George. He started on Monday, and he comes with just a wealth of experience in planning and code enforcement. And you will see Mr. Saudi around, so please say hello. We've also hired Jessica Bauer with the Police Department. She is the civilian parking attendant. She's been really attentive in her job. And if you all have any questions or anything at all with a citation that you've received, please feel free to email me. And lastly, with the Police Department, we've hired Robert Johnson, who is our new accreditation manager. As you all recall, our previous accreditation manager retired, and so we're very fortunate that we were able to fill this position as quickly as we have so that we can continue with the accreditation process. Just a quick update on the North Beach project. We still haven't received any word from the governor's office regarding the DCR grant. However, in the meantime, we are thinking of potential alternate solutions in the event the grant isn't awarded in full or if the grant isn't awarded at all. So we're still coming up with some solutions for that, and so I don't have just hard details to share just yet, and I will continue to provide updates. Council may recall that we had, the beginning of the year, we had a representative from the Broadband Council come and just give us some information based on a study that was done here in town, and council approved for us to move forward with phase, sorry, there was on the wrong slide, to move forward with phase 1 of the study. And so what the Broadband Council study did, it just confirmed some of the disruptions to service that we've experienced whenever we've had large events, or if there are weather issues, there's just a lot of connectivity issues. And so that study just really identified some of those issues. So the council approved phase 1 of the proposal that was presented to us. Now, the findings of the phase 1 was that the broadband access is inconsistent and expensive. Emergency communications are a challenge in town, again, particularly when we have large events. Radio upgrades are needed. There's a lack of redundancy for critical services. So this is just a high-level overview of the findings of the phase 1 portion. Now, at the July meeting, Sarah Sullivan from the Broadband Council, she will attend the meeting and provide a more in-depth update regarding the findings. Our Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission has 2 vacancies. So we are asking that you would submit names as recommendations for that board. We currently have 3 members, which satisfies a quorum right now. However, if a member fails to attend a meeting, then there isn't a quorum and the meetings can't be held. So we are asking for you to just send over recommendations to fill those 2 vacancies. Additionally, the PrAC bylaws have been revised, and that will appear on the July agenda for your consideration as well. The Board of Zoning Appeals, there is a recommendation for 3 members, Larry Roberson, Stephen Grant Zirkle, and Maureen Elizabeth McCabe. Julia Savage and Anthony Siciliani. They will continue their appointments until the end of their respective calendar years. In order to have a full board, the appointments must be finalized no later than August 7th. And so I bring these names up to you all because these are the recommended appointments. However, a more extensive discussion will occur at the July meeting regarding the appointments to the BZA. And lastly, just as a matter of professional development, our assistant town manager, Kyler, is attending the VLGMA, which is the Virginia Local Government Management Association Summer Conference, and that is being held in Virginia Beach. The conference started today, and it runs through Friday, the 20th. And I am elated to share with you all that I've received a partial scholarship to attend the Senior Executive Institute program hosted by the Weldon Cooper Center at UVA's Darden School of Business. The program dates are from July 13th through the 25th.
Good job.
Thank you.
Is that everything? All right. Moving right along, we go to presentations, and we have Mr. Trivett, our county supervisor. Welcome, Mr. Trivett.
Madam Mayor, Town Council, good to see you. Attended the 25th anniversary of the library. So did the mayor and so did Mr. Larson, and it was fantastic. Just to think that that library has been here for 25 years, and the children and the adults and the people that's visited here that it has served, it was actually a wonderful celebration. So that was good. Got that out of the way. And we also have somebody that we're going to need to appoint for the Board of Zoning Appeals for the county. Peggy Campbell had filled that position for 15 years, and she'll be leaving that board for health issues. So if you know anybody that wants to be on the county board, please pass that along and let me know. The Northern Neck Planning District meeting will be held in the town on the 21st of July. That's probably the first time that I can remember it being held here. It's several counties involved in that. The last time Westmoreland hosted, it's hosted by each one of the counties and it rotates, was when the new school opened, Westmoreland High School. So thanks to Eric Nelson, who's on that board. He's trying to facilitate one of the restaurants in town for us to have that meeting at, and we're working on that, and we're excited about that being here in town so that we can showcase our town to all the regional counties that's on that board. Let's see, we're going to do a domain change for our Westmoreland County domain. Currently, it's westmoreland-county.org. A lot of people have issues getting through like that because of the way it is. We're going to go to westmorelandvirginia.gov. So as soon as that takes place, I'll let you know. Normally, if you Google Westmoreland County, you get Pennsylvania. I don't know why. They're just the first one, and I've done it myself many times. And so hopefully maybe this will help if we put the VA in there. So we're going to be changing that domain pretty quick. A real good thing that's happened that we voted on this past month, I believe it was last month that we voted to do away with the fees for tires. And this month, we're doing away with the fees for brush as well as electronics. So I've heard numerous complaints because, you know, through the years that people had to, and you had to go to the treasurer's office, you had to get that $5 permit. People usually go to these transfer stations with those kind of things on weekends, and they get there and be turned around. So as of July 1st, we won't charge that fee any longer. So you'll be able to go to the transfer station with electronics and with just your regular decal and deposit them there. And then go down to the county for your brush, and your tires. I think it's 4 tires that you can bring a day at no charge as long as you're not a commercial company. So that's a good thing. That'll be positive. The Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development grant was received by the Northern Neck Planning Commission. And they're going to administer that grant. I believe it was for $100,000, and they're going to do a survey throughout the county, which they did several years ago when they got a grant, and they revitalized out there by Hall's store and some homes, and it also includes them looking in the town of Colonial Beach. So, and Madam Mayor, you know you'll be working with Jerry Davis on that, who's the executive director of that, and so hopefully some good things will come out of that. Is there anything that anybody has that they want to ask me, or anything that I might have forgot? Two, I just want to say, Chief Parsons, Chris, EMS and the Sheriff's Office, the festival was fantastic. Y'all did an outstanding job. A lot of people were commenting on your professionalism as well as, I don't know how Chris is everywhere, but I've heard so many positive comments about him as well, and he's doing an outstanding job. And somebody said, I think it was last week or maybe last month, that he can't go on vacation anymore because when he does that, things kind of have issues. So, but anyway, I just want to say, Chris, you're doing a great job, and I'm hearing a lot of positive things about Public Works under your leadership.
I just have one thing. I'm so glad that the tag program is getting revamped for the county. I think it's been a massive barrier to getting trash to the stations, and in the end, it just ends up on the side of the street. And, we do the Save the Bay Day event here in town, but we don't go outside town limits. And I had several people ask me, particularly this year, what is the county doing? And I also had several participants come up who were picking up trash in town and said, what is the county gonna do about the old road? And that's the road that's behind Food Lion that goes directly to the dump, to the transfer station. It is literally on your way to the transfer station, and yet here it is just 100 yards from the transfer station, and there's just stuff everywhere. So I just wanted to make sure that stays on your radar. I know you're aware of it, but it's worth noting again. And also 205 between really Halls and the town, both sides of that transfer station are affected as well. And I know there have been requests in the past, when Norm was there, to have the jail come and clean up. But I just want to make sure that continues to get addressed. And
Well, the county just recently paid, I think, $11,000, and the state paid, I think it was matching, and they hired a company to come and clean up that whole area. What's happening on the old road, or New Monrovia, or whatever you want to call it, but it is the old road to me because that's what it's always been. People are going to that transfer station and being turned away, and that's where it ends up, whether it's tires or whatever. So I'm hoping that maybe some of these changes were made. Obviously, the research we done and what we found out about the $1.2 million that the county was throwing away every year for commercial companies to dump and bring trash from all over the surrounding counties. We've ended that, so that's helping us actually use some of those funds, because we were bringing in about $16,000 in revenue, and we've got to pay for that stuff to be carried away, whether it's tires or brush or whatever it may be. And so we're going to absorb those fees. So money had to come from somewhere, so we're kind of using that money, but we're going to run out of it because we're trying to distribute it where we can use it for things to help the community. So, yep, so hopefully I hear what you're saying, and we keep that on the radar all the time, we know, and the sheriff's office watches that area. I mean, it's going to continue to happen. It's happening forever, but hopefully we can, curtail it some.
yeah, I know people catch people on trail cams out there and everything else, and you ride down it, and each day it's there's
That's
something
bad.
new dumped there, so, yeah, just continue to keep it on
Maybe
your
we need to
radar.
move the transfer station over there.
Maybe to that
So,
side.
anybody else have any questions, or? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, is Dr. Addo here? Yes. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Town Council members, and all present tonight. Of course, it's summertime. Our kids are home. Hopefully, they are in summer camps. They are resting, rejuvenating, still learning. And we are busy getting ready for the kids to return. Believe it or not, it's going to be July soon. And then our new teachers are coming back July 28th. And then all of our staff will be back August the 4th. And we are up and running all over again. I will share a few things with you. Before I do that, we truly enjoyed being in the parade on Saturday. It was a highlight. And I want to give a big shout out to our young ladies, our girls who led this school division. I know it was hot out there, and they had their pom-poms and walked the entire time and enjoyed it so much. Kudos to our cheerleading coaches also, who made them come out there to do it, and we are excited about that. Also for our transportation folks that came out. The reason why I mention that, guys, is we're not paying them to be there on Saturday. They are doing this out of their goodness of their heart, and they're proud to be Drifter and be part of the community and be part of their parade. So we're very excited that happened. Right now, we are in the third week of summer school. As most of you probably know, next week is our last week of summer school. It's over June the 26th. And then following that, 2 weeks from there, I think July the 7th, I believe, we'll start the 21st Century Community Learning Center program, which is a 2-week program after school for an enrichment. And BAM is a strong partnership in that sense. It's a grant-funded program for after-school enrichment, and I think it's very beneficial for kids to be part of that, for us to continue to provide something for them over the summer break. I don't have much to share with you tonight, since we are basically working to get school back up and running again. We just closed out, and now we're moving to cleaning, preventative maintenance, and so forth. One action item that I'd like to brief you on is a capital improvement. Right now, we are working with Scheibel Construction Company. They are the ones that bid on, we only had one bid to work with us on the high school front entrance, and they come with a lot of experience. They have completed, I know, 2 schools, vestibules in Westmoreland. A lot of schools they have also worked with in Maryland, the Chesapeake area, Virginia Beach, so they come with a lot of experience working with schools doing renovations. Right now, we are doing some value engineering with them because their bid came up a little bit higher than we anticipated. So they are, as I mentioned in our school board meeting, to our board members, we will probably not have Air Jordans, but go with Adidas. So that's the process we're going through right now, just to make sure we bring down the cost a little bit, and they're willing to work with us, so we're excited about that. Now we are, lastly, I am very excited, tickled to death, and overjoyed that I announced, as I've shared with the staff, from many years, I don't know exactly how many years, I think Colonial Beach Public Schools have seen this past year alone the highest retention rate for staff, and we are so excited about that. I know we lost 2 teachers at a high school, believe it or not, with the kind of turnovers we had at the high school for the past several years, and maybe 3 at the elementary school. So we are looking at probably about 90% retention rate, which is awesome. And it's good for our kids. Our kids will return and see the same faces that they have worked with, and we're very excited about that. Now we'll try to add more highly qualified individuals who are passionate about kids to our family and our staff and to Colonial Beach. So we're doing something right if they want to stay and work with our school system, work with our kids, and I'm very proud of that. And with that said, I think that's all I have, and I'm available to answer any questions for you.
How many kids enrolled in summer school this time around?
That's a good question. Good question. I have to, can I get back to you on that?
Okay.
I think
The answer
Mr.
was
Williams has the
72.
number.
I think I said it was
72?
72.
Did you?
Does
Okay,
that sound
okay.
right? I took notes
Thank
at the
you.
meeting.
From the, that escaped my mind. We do have the elementary school, the high school is a little bit different because it's more credit recovery for the high school. And with those two, each grade level is a little bit, the numbers are different in each grade level. I know for first grade, if I remember correctly, we had a waiting list for some of those grade levels because we only have one teacher that is teaching, and we cannot go over a certain number of students for those.
I got a resounding 72, so I will go with
72?
that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, just one of the questions I forgot to mention in my update earlier. One of the things that was mentioned at the school board meeting was I think it was the new parking lot, the site plan. Was that the site plan they were talking about? It was like $11,000?
Correct.
They were asking, this is just for the town manager's awareness. They were asking if there's any ways to help with that, or if it's a required thing that they have to have a site plan for the
It had to
parking
be
lot.
surveyed, yes.
So just putting that on the town manager's radar, just in case there's something the town can do to help with that.
There is a prior survey for the existing parking lot, so I would imagine that is that your phone?
Yeah.
It is yours.
What's that? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
thought
You
I
weren't
turned
here
it- I
when
thought
I
I
started the
turned it off.
meeting and I asked people to silence their cell phones. I have a copy of the originals of the site plan when the elementary school was built. And, so maybe it's possible to call back that company and that would be a cost saver because they would have all the data points in place.
The train may have already left the station.
Okay, fair enough.
They have already come and done their preliminary work.
Okay.
Good?
Thanks, that's all I had.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
All
it.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Mr. Duke Dotson with the Dotson Development Group to give us an update and an update on some possibilities for maybe Phase 4, right?
Correct, yeah, thank you guys for having me. Town council has heard most of these thoughts, but I'm gonna read them anyway. It's a lot of thoughts, so I typed it up, and for the benefit of the public, they can hear it all as well. So, yeah, I realize that we need to make a decision on the future of our Phase 4 project. Here are our thoughts on that parcel. When we started this multi-phase development agreement here in Colonial Beach, we tried to carefully assess each parcel, determine the highest and best use for each piece of land. We looked at what Colonial Beach already had and what it needed in order to help downtown Colonial Beach flourish in the coming decades. For the most part, phases 1, 2, and 3A proceeded as planned. Our fourth project, which we call 3B, is underway now, next between the public baths and the beach shop. Our original plan for Phase 4 was to build a 55-room hotel. At that time, we thought that was the best plan for that parcel. Several things have changed in the last few years, including, number one, interest rates have risen significantly, which makes that type of project not feasible. Number two, an abundance of short-term rentals have entered the market, decreasing the need for hotels at this time. So we feel a hotel there would not only hurt the River Edge Inn and the River View Inn, but also isn't needed because of the number of Airbnbs. That's something that it's been a proliferation of those in the last few years in a lot of markets, including Colonial Beach. When we started The town had communicated with us that they were working on a plan to replace the parking spaces that would be taken away by this development. If you remember, a few years ago, we were taking away where Willie's was and also the Phase 4 lot, which is a lot of the downtown parking. The town back then was working on a plan to replace the parking spaces in pocket lots here and there that we would take away with that development. And this has happened in some situations, like the parking lot over on Irving, but not at the scale that is what is needed, probably, in your opinion, and in my opinion as well. In addition to that, we have pretty significant economic and job uncertainty right now, especially in the DC and Northern Virginia markets, which affects Colonial Beach quite a bit. So in our opinion, building a hotel there on that parcel and taking away all that parking would not be in the best interest of Colonial Beach as a town, nor would it be a good idea for us as developers. In the next 12 to 14 months, who knows what could happen in this economy, in the world. But with that in mind, the next question is, what should we do with that parcel? Well, the parking lot is somewhat utilized. It's not fully utilized. It's crowded on weekends, during the season, during festivals, et cetera. While it's not the right time to build a hotel there, I do think there's something we can do with that land in the near future that will further boost the vibrancy of downtown Colonial Beach. We feel that the best use for that land now is to build a mixed-use development similar to our Phase 3A structure that has retail on the ground level facing the boardwalk and condos above. We could do that on half of that land, that part of the lane closest to the water. Sorry, I lost my spot. And then keep the remaining half as parking. So that parking would be used by the retail, by the condo owners, and also some paid parking for the public as it's used today. The parking spots that are lost can be pushed to the land either in front of the riverboat, any other pocket lots that the town can locate, similar to the one on Irving. Our plan would be to purchase the parcel now at the higher number in the contract, since we're not building what is in the original development agreement, and then start to design the building, go through the permitting process, et cetera. This would mean that that building would likely start to being built about a year after closing. And so for that year, that lot can remain a paid parking lot, giving the town some more time to plan and locate other spaces. I recognize that you'd prefer me to bring you building plans with exactly what we're going to build. Keeping in mind, doing something like that, you spend $400,000 or $500,000 in design, and it's not feasible to spend all that money, design the building, not knowing if it's going to be built. And please also keep in mind that we've spent significant due diligence dollars on this parcel already, including environmental, hotel feasibility studies, et cetera. This new development is not a pie-in-the-sky proposition for us. We have serious investors that have already committed to being part of this project. In our opinion, the town would benefit by, one, receiving the cash for the land today. In my proposal, would be the higher of the two numbers. You would still have the benefit of having that parking lot for another year as we plan, design, and get ready to build. The public would still be able to pay for parking on half of that land after we build indefinitely. The town would receive fees, real estate taxes for the land, which it doesn't receive now. You would have a bona fide boardwalk that is bookended by attractive developments at either end that would benefit both locals and tourists. I realize this plan deviates from the original plan. I feel like we have been a good partner to the town. We brought real estate tax revenue, vibrant businesses, and positive attention for the town and the press. Folks from other parts of Virginia now know about CB that didn't know about it previously. We've taken significant risk that others weren't willing to take at that time. We continue to take this risk by backstopping the businesses of Circa, Drift Muse, Kobe Workspaces, et cetera, that employ over 50 locals. We restored beautiful buildings and historic buildings in downtown that had sat in disrepair for decades. We built structures on land that had sat vacant for decades. We've always kept the best interests of Colonial Beach in mind with all of our projects, and we have paid homage to its history. We never talked bad about the town, even when we disagreed. I would like to continue to be a good partner for Colonial Beach in the future, and I feel a little leeway here on this phase is a reasonable ask from one partner to another. If you'd like more specifics, I think, again, there's two options that we would propose we could go with. Option one is we pay the lesser amount in the contract as described. We build something soon thereafter, which would be something like 4,000 to 8,000 square foot of retail and somewhere between 10 and 35 condos. And that could be completed within 36 months of closing, so 1 year to design, 2 years to build and stabilize. Another option is we pay the higher amount now with no terms to meet in the development agreement. So I'm happy to discuss those with you guys and welcome any questions, comments.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so kind of a twofold question. I was walking around after the parade on Saturday, and the condos that were already existing there's already a bunch of retail space that's empty down there. So what makes your plan different from that existing building already?
You're talking about the condo building behind Drift Muse? Yeah. So I think it's a matter of design. The location being waterfront is better than being not waterfront. Ceiling heights, signage. There's a lot of things that if I had built that building back then, I would have done differently to make the retail more attractive. But I probably wouldn't have built more retail off the water. I think a small town like Colonial Beach, especially a seasonal town, makes restaurants and retail very hard to survive year-round. And I think anybody that's ran a business in this town can back that up. So I think everybody wants retail, they like the idea of it, but not everybody wants to support it year-round. So I think less retail in a town like this, or right-sizing the retail in a town like this, is better than having just a lot of it. And we have a lot of it between Colonial, Washington, et cetera. So, yeah, I think the space we would build would be more attractive. And the two bays are 600-square-foot bays, pretty small, but they would be attractive, great ceiling heights, great look, great signage, et cetera.
Okay. And you already said you have investors. Do you have investors for those two spaces already, like businesses already
No,
interested?
the spaces, we're going to start marketing those now. So that building will be ready in about a year, so that's not spoken for yet.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Williams?
Yeah, did I hear it correctly? You said 48,000 square feet of retail?
Yeah, 4,000 to 8,000, correct, would be our estimate, yeah.
Okay.
428, not
Yeah.
48.
Yeah, 4,000
Yeah,
to 8,000.
okay, yeah. I don't know if I misheard you or,
No,
okay.
yeah, 4,000 to 8,000.
okay.
And it would be the part, obviously, that faces the boardwalk, and behind it and above it would be condos and parking.
Yeah, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, as far as the parking, you suggested half of it would be indefinitely parking. What would that look like? Would there be a contract? Because, I mean, obviously, if you own the property, you could at any time say, no, we're not going to keep it parking. How
Yeah.
would that work?
So I use the term indefinitely. I think what I would suggest is that we would need it, obviously, for the condos and the retail. So some of it would be parking forever. In a perfect world, sure. Would I like the ability to maybe build something on some of it at some point? Sure. So my preference would be not to tie it up with some kind of long contract, but the town would have 1 year with all of the parking, and then at least a long period of time with, half of it where people could park there like they do today, would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
How many condos?
I put in there between 10 and 35, so the reason why it's such a big range is because of the height and the depth. So we would have to get permission to go above a certain height. My proposal would be to go 3 stories. We went 2 stories at Drift Muse because we didn't want to unnecessarily block views behind us. In my opinion, that parcel, there's less views to block, so I think a 3-story building would be similar size height to the riverboat, which is right there. So that's, in my opinion, would be a good height. So if we were only to do 2, obviously we would do less condos.
Anybody else have any other questions right now? Mr. Wood?
No real questions. Obviously, I don't think anyone was looking for an answer today, and we're not going to be able to negotiate everything here at the dais. I think it's an interesting proposal. It's something that we need to take a look at in a little further detail amongst ourselves. But certainly, I want to thank you, Mr. Dodson, for sharing that information.
Sure, thanks for having me. Good.
I do have a question for the town attorney. I know the original agreement was to build a hotel, and that's council's decision if they want to change it. How does that look, just for the benefit of the community members? How does that look? Like, is that come back to the table and renegotiate like we did originally, where we have an agreement that whatever they propose to build is what they build, or how does that work?
Well, the agreement's already been changed a few times over the years, so it would likely be an amendment to the existing agreement, which would come back before council to approve.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think if you do mixed use there, you have to go through the CUP process, which would also require you to go through the planning commission and provide renderings, floor plans, site plans, compliance, stormwater management, all of those things prior to approvals for that, which you've already have been through that process, but, so just so that there's an awareness of what a next step in that realm is. And that's regardless of option A or B that you kind of talked about right there.
That's correct, yeah. I guess the goal is to agree in principle first, and then we would obviously go through the trouble to create those plans to present for that, for sure.
Go ahead.
Not quite the same topic, but I do have a question. I'm not a construction expert by any means, but when I walk along the boardwalk and I see the mound of red clay dirt that's there, no foundation or anything around it, can you explain to me kind of what's going on there? Because I don't understand. I've never quite seen construction like that.
Yeah, so they're gonna have to move it around a little bit more, but long story short is there's 3 different buildings. The back 2 buildings are up on stilts, because we park underneath that building. We actually have a slab on grade, so it's just building up to that. And you have to be above the floodplain, so.
So there'll be like a foundation around it at some point?
Yes, pretty
Okay.
soon, very soon.
Okay.
They're moving some dirt in the next couple of days, and then they'll start going horizontal here probably in a week or 2.
Okay, thank you.
And Chris, the sidewalk will be fixed by Friday night, just so you know. Cool,
Okay.
good, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, next up is our public comment. This is general public comment, and I know a lot of you guys know this, but there is a specific public hearing, so we'll do that in a little bit. But right now, we'll just open it up for regular public comment. During all public comments or hearings, we do ask that certain guidelines be followed. We're going to ask that you stand at the podium, and for the record, please state your name and address. If you'd like to be contacted, you can provide your contact information to the clerk on the sign-in page. Make your comments to the council as a whole. Be brief, state your position, and provide facts. And you may provide also written statements or supporting materials to the clerk, and she can distribute them to the council and the town manager. We do not debate, but we will follow up on comments, which is provided also by the town manager. Speak clearly, as we want to hear what you have to say, and the council will try to hear everyone who wishes to speak on a subject. The comments are limited to 5 minutes, and time cannot be transferred to another speaker. But if you represent a group, you may wish to identify other members of your group who are in attendance. And after public comment is closed, I encourage you to stay as the council engages in dialogue and deliberation on the remainder agenda items.
First up is Mr. Nigel Long.
Welcome, Mr. Long.
Nigel Long, 115 Lynn Haven Court. Madam Mayor, councillors, I think speaking after that interesting presentation is a little anticlimactic perhaps, but I did have a couple of points to make. Firstly, to thank Mr. Trivett for all the work he's done with trash challenges in Westmoreland County. And just to add a PSA for those, maybe those listening who may not know, that we're moving from, as I'm sure you all know, we're moving from hang tags on July the 1st to stickers on our windshield, which will be sent out from Westmoreland County, hopefully soon. But just so, make sure people know that. The comments I wanted to make were really on the items of new business at the end of the agenda here, and just some thoughts that the people who will be presenting may choose to address at their option. I think on the collecting our personal property taxes, having a process for doing that with taxing authority consulting services is great. Might be interesting for the public to know what that costs us and what you expect as an outcome from that. I think it would also be interesting to know whether you're considering doing that for utilities. That might be another question that the councillors have for you, particularly remembering the very disappointing numbers that you were showing us all in terms of the revenue from our utility collection. On the second item, Lisa, you'll think I'm picking on you. The extra $2.5 million that you're going to move, thanks to the grant that we all got. Great news. I'd just be interested to hear that's going in the 24-25 budget. It'd be interesting to comment on what you will be recommending to town council. I have a pretty good idea, but what you'll be recommending to town council to do with that great rollover funds that presumably you'll have at the end of this month. And then talking about the end of this month brings us to the third item, which is probably what concerns me most. So we suddenly need $500,000 for the operating costs of our wastewater treatment plant. Now, maybe that is not a surprise. Perhaps that's not a surprise, but it's a surprise that we only found it out in June when we're at the end of our financial year. I'm just intrigued as to how we didn't know during the course of the year that we would need to appropriate those funds, and we're doing it just at the end of the year. And I read the memo, but I'm still not clear why that's at the end of the year. And what really concerns me is whether that amount is if it's an ongoing expense, is included in the 25-26 budget, and that's great. I wouldn't dream of asking the mayor or the town council, but it's always good to see a nodding head in front of me, so that we allowed for it next year, but we're only bringing it up now in front of us. Even that slightly surprising, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dahlin.
Next up is Ms. Terry Gasterlin.
Welcome, Ms. Asterlin.
Hello, welcome, Mayor Robin. Hello, Mayor Robin.
It's all right, Terry. Mayor Terry.
Exactly. So it's a little bit new to be on this side and speaking to you all, but it's a real pleasure. My name is Terry Gasterland. I'm here to speak for my father, Douglas E. Gasterland, MD, and my aunt, Mary D. Coombs, who live at 1317 and 1313 Irving Avenue. They share a driveway, which I'm grateful to the planning department for helping out with recently. Our family has had a connection to Colonial Beach for 110 years, since 1915, when my great-great-grandmother, Sarah Hughes, bought the property where my aunt and father currently reside. I'm mayor of the city of Del Mar, California, and it's an awful lot of fun to watch the town council meetings here. I call Del Mar Colonial Beach West. So I spend 2 weeks here every 8 weeks helping my father out. We've had a pier at our home since 2012. It is recorded as part of our property, and we pay property tax on it each year. We have an existing erosion plan signed by the previous city manager, previous Val Folds. And without public comment on item 11A today, I wanted to provide some feedback on the red line version of the pier lease agreement that's in tab B on today's packet. My concern is that it seems that the lease as written reduces the value of Colonial Beach waterfront properties with piers because of the unilateral lease transfer terms. They don't have defined conditions of transfer. So I would hope that perhaps there could be a brief revisit of that clause so that we can define at least the conditions for a transfer to be able to be done. The third whereas still implies the lease is for construction of a dock. The title has been changed, which is terrific, but this clause may need more attention. The previous lease, it was actually 2 leases ago, allowed renewal. I understand that the Virginia Constitution makes sure that we have to be very careful about renewal and automatic renewal. But I wanted to draw that this version explicitly says that it's the town's unilateral ability to renew. We're uncomfortable with that. We remain uncomfortable with that, but I do understand it's a Virginia Constitution problem. This lease has a unilateral rent increase of 60% over the prior lease, and that's a lot. So I wanted to point out that we already have an approved voluntary erosion mitigation plan. We actually started it before we started constructing the pier. And option 2's addendum seems to apply only to new but not existing plans. So I would hope that that could be attended to also. There needs to be a comma after should the home be sold to another. It's a minor detail, but everything else is grammatically correct in the entire lease that I could find. But back to most important, the lease has no definition for terms of transfer. Conditions for transfer do need to be clear. Otherwise, it may give pause to anybody who wants to buy any of the waterfront homes that have a pier. The decision as written is up to the town with no clarity in this lease. Thus, I would assert that this lease as written would reduce the value of Colonial Beach waterfront properties with piers. Now, we have no intention to sell. We're going to be here for another 110 years. But I do want to attend to property values here in Colonial Beach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Eric Nelson.
Welcome, Mr. Nelson.
Madam Mayor, Council, Eric Nelson, 1321 Lossing Avenue. I have missed the last few meetings, and I apologize for that. I'm usually a familiar face here, but I had other commitments. But I'm here tonight to talk about two different things which are very, very important to me. One of them is downtown Colonial Beach. I think all of you are aware that I'm the president of downtown Colonial Beach, and as you know, we have received our designation as full Main Street status, full Virginia Main Street status, which is super exciting. We also have hired, the town has hired the executive director, Charlotte Cole, who is also a super fantastic assistant to us. And so I feel like downtown Colonial Beach is really running on all cylinders now. We've got a lot of things going on. And one of the things that we have going on, which some of you may have noticed, is there's new flags going up around town that have the town seal. We received the approval by the town to use the seal in various ways, but particularly with respect to flags. So we've been ordering the flags, selling the flags. They're being sold at 3 retail shops here in town. They're being sold at Magnolia Hall, Hawthorne Mercantile, and CB Creative. And so I just wanted to put a little plug in for that. It is a fundraiser for downtown Colonial Beach, and they're going like hotcakes, and we're having to order them every couple of weeks. So if you're looking for flags, that's where they are. And we do intend to have some other flags as well, some garden flags and some golf cart flags. We also intend to use the other logo that we've been given permission to use, which is the one with the squiggly line and the anchor. But anyway, I just want to tell you everything's going well with downtown Colonial Beach, and wanted to mention the fundraiser regarding the flags. The other subject I want to talk about is also near and dear to my heart, which is CB Creative. That's the new art center, which is just across these empty lots over here. It is also going really well. I think maybe some of you know that I'm the president of that organization as well, and it's a super exciting addition to the town. We've been open since November. Lots going on, and one of the things that has been going on very recently is we have done a fundraiser related to Adirondack chairs. We asked artists in town to paint Adirondack chairs, and then we auctioned them off this past weekend, and we raised $3,400, and that $3,400 is going to go directly to a new ceramic workshop that we are going to be putting into the garage there at the Arts Center. So in very shortly, you will be able to take classes in throwing pottery and putting pottery in kilns, making pottery. So it's going to be an exciting new addition to the Arts Center. And the Arts Center is growing every day. New classes. I taught a class last night. So there's new things going on every day. It's a very exciting addition to the town. That's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly is Mr. Will Knuckles.
Welcome, Mr. Knuckles.
Good evening, Will Knuckles, 204 Monroe Bay Avenue. Starting off the meeting, working on the minutes from 2003 is laughable, right? But probably worse than that is you don't have any minutes on the meeting that happened just prior to this one, or the meeting before that, or the meeting before that, anything in this calendar year, right? In terms of being able to connect the dots on what you're doing as a body, right? In terms of finished business as well as things that are in progress. The documentation is important because that is the only official record of what you're actually up to. And there's nothing. There's nothing for the public to view. There's nothing for you to view. So you're sort of hoping that you have a vague recollection as to what happens from meeting to meeting and trying to go for it that way. That's no way to do business. It's not how government normally works. But for some reason, town council does it that way. The planning commission, although they have a lot more recent minutes than you do, are still massively behind. Parks and Rec Committee doesn't have anything. The Board of Zoning Appeals, right? Y'all's a very different depiction. So if you have to watch the YouTube version of things because there are no minutes. But if you did, you'd see that, that was pretty poorly attended. We have to do a better job on advertising things in plain language that the public can understand so they can get engaged. If you talk about having a stakeholder workshop, you actually have to have stakeholders. Next, the wastewater treatment plant. I find it bizarre that I have to come to town council meetings to find out that there's yet more permit violations, that things have happened and that bad stuff has gone into the water that exceeds the things that are actually supposed to be the minimum standard in terms of what's supposed to be happening in water quality. And I don't have a warm fuzzy feeling because I don't think that any of the folks that are doing the operations side are epidemiologists or risk assessment experts or people that do hydrologic modeling. So I would say they have no basis for actually saying, from a human health point of view, that this stuff just doesn't matter, like the secret to pollution is dilution, right? That works in some vague sense, but it doesn't work on a locality sense. And I don't really want to hear that like there's some cow pooping in some other locality somewhere that's an agricultural district that actually has more fecal components coming into the water than we do, because I don't live there, I live here. So I'm only really interested in the water where we go. So those analogies to say like, oh, it could be worse if you were somewhere else is sort of meaningless and bordering on insulting, I think, to the population here. DEQ agreement, right? Nobody's talked about like where we are with the DEQ agreement. We have the consent order, but like there's an agreement within the consent order. I haven't heard any updates on that. My contact, the state's on vacation this week, so I couldn't bring any updates, but I don't know why it's this hard to follow. In terms of trying to follow things, I'm still trying to find out from a FOIA request I had just on like what kind of scope of work and materials requirements did you have when you did the sand replenishment, and that goes back to April, right? So I don't understand like why we can't continually, in a very transparent way, provide information to the public. It's way too hard. It's out of state standards, and I think that needs to change. In terms of other lack of transparency, the $500,000, $500,000 that you're asking for, and only vaguely says that like, oh, it's kind of busted and messed up, so we need to have $500,000 in the last 2 weeks of the fiscal year, right? That doesn't stand to reason. It either means that nobody's been paying attention as to what's been going on cost-wise, or you plan on pushing out a giant amount of money in a couple weeks. This sort of, from the public's perspective, is an irrational version of budgeting and doesn't stand to reason. So that would deserve a lot more explanation than the meeting packet, which doesn't have any of the background information on this topic. It just has the briefest of explanation. It's $500,000. We got to do better than that. Things that relate to the public coming to town. We did have a great successful event with the River Festival. It was wonderful, right? But we also, you look at the most recent police report, 52 parking tickets went out sort of around that same time. So we still have an issue of having a not trivial amount of people who come to town who end up having a bad day, because you definitely have a bad day, or at the end of your stay, you're actually leaving with a note on your car that says, I got a violation, and this was not exactly a great experience here. So I think at some point looking holistically at what we're doing in terms of the trade-offs between what we're collecting money-wise and how we are giving people sort of bad vibes when they have these bad experiences, that balancing act, right, that hasn't happened that I've seen, that we have really dug into that. On peer leases, as far as like policy goes, I don't know what in the world you're working on. Are you trying to figure out whether it's about public access? Are you trying to keep the public off of these lands, which are public lands, and trying to dedicate them to individual people? Are you trying to make money for the town by trying to actually increase the leases pieces because you're trying to bring in money? Are you trying to set fees at a level that are close to the price of renting a slip? Because that had been mentioned about like, how did you come up with this number, that it's close to the price of a commercial slip, in which case it seems like the town's interest is in trying to prop up commercial marina prices, right? So that to me doesn't sound like a rational policy goal. But none of the policies have really been expressed as to what you're trying to accomplish. So you're looking at, can we modify individual words and sentences when you don't seem to have a goal in the first place? So I don't know how you're going to do that exercise. And on the last piece with the Dodson piece, this to me is a giant change, and I hope you go back from the beginning. If we're going to actually look at, it's not going to be what we thought it was going to be in the past. And, at least to start with, like, well, before we decide whether to just take it as presented, what's the commercial value of that property today? Right, I know there was a lot of questions initially about whether we were sold under market value or not, but we're short on money in the town, right? We have some massive costs. So if they're not going to do what they said initially, can we at least, before you make a decision, look at whether or not that agreement is the best way to go for the public interest, or whether there are alternative uses from other interests that might actually put a lot more money in the public coffers, because we really need money. Thanks.
Thank you. That's everyone that signed up. If anybody else would like to come up. All right, we're going to close public comment. I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we will start back up with the lease agreements on unfinished business, okay? 5-minute recess. already am in net negative. Okay, all right, we're gonna reconvene, 7:39 PM for the minutes. Okay, and next up is, Resolution 1625, the lease agreements for the dock and pier constructions. And, Mr. Duggan, you wanna read us into kind of where we are from our last meeting to this?
Yes, and just to restate a bit, I mean, for years, Colonial Beach has had some type of agreement for piers. There are many, obviously, existing piers in the beach. In the past, there have been pier permits, pier leases, shoreline maintenance agreements, a variety of things. The last lease that was approved by council was in 2019, which was a 5-year lease. And that's the lease I started with, making changes to that. You can see from the red line in your packet that there have been fairly extensive changes to that, trying to clarify some things. Not everything has been clarified that could. I mean, a lot of this is at the discretion of the town as to whether the town wants to renew a lease, whether the town wishes to agree that a lease can be transferred. That's currently and has been at the discretion of the town. I mean, one day the town may decide that the piers are too much of an issue and that there's a problem with erosion and that has to be addressed. I'm just speculating, but I mean, there could be a time where the council, a future council could decide that we can no longer have leases, so they aren't indefinite. The Virginia Code, how this sets up, and also the Constitution, sets that if you're going to have a lease longer than 5 years, that you have to advertise that and open it for bids. So there have been some shoreline maintenance agreements in the past, and they followed that process where they were open for bids. And part of the condition of the bid was that you had to develop a plan for putting riprap and all in front of in the town's property, in front of your property. The problem with them being open for bids is that you could have a situation where someone comes in and bids on the property in front of your house. And unless the town council finds a reason that that's not in the town's interest, the council has to accept the highest bid. So I've focused on the 5-year terms, getting back to those. At the last council meeting, there was a question about the inspections, and I think Mr. Grandstaff wanted me to spell out specifically that you needed to have them inspected. And I defaulted to the town manager or her designee would do the inspection. Her designee could be an employee or a contractor licensed in this. And I mentioned in my memo the possibility that the town could charge a fee if it's going to be a professional who does the inspection to determine whether there's a damage of erosion, if the pier is continued or if the pier is built. So you also wanted to have incentives as a possibility. So basically, and you can come up with different options, but the options I propose for consideration on council is the first one, if it's determined by the town manager or her designee that there is a material likelihood of erosion as a result of the pier, then the town can require that there be shoreline maintenance, a plan for that, and that'll be set forth as part of the lease in order to construct a pier or maintain an existing pier. So that's the first thing. And so there may only be a few that, if any, that fall into that category. The second is that if it's determined that it's not, then you just have the lease with no shoreline maintenance, no exhibit B to it. The third, the way I drafted it, was that If the second applies where there's no material chance of shoreline maintenance, but there could be some, and it would be in the interest of everybody to preserve the shoreline, that you choose to voluntarily do that, even though you don't have to, that you could get some reduction in your rent. And I just put forth a possibility of a percentage if council wanted to consider that. So those are the changes from last time. And it's just trying to, a lot of leases are coming up for renewal now, and we're trying to get, establish a new form lease that can apply to most everybody. So that was a goal here. We'll start with what we have so we aren't doing something completely different than what was done before and what people would expect.
Okay, all right, with that, I'm gonna open it up for discussion. Is there any comments from anybody to start us out with? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Yes, one of the comments I had from the public was the definition of the transfer. Is that something that you have looked into?
Well, this is what the current lease provides. I think I added a sentence saying that if the property is transferred, the transferee or the new owner of the property shall be bound by all the terms and conditions of this. But it's still at the town's discretion. Now, I understand how someone it hasn't been, it's always been at the town's discretion, at least in the immediate past. I saw one from 15 or 20 years ago where it was less discretionary from the town. So, I mean, that's a possibility if you wanted to bind the town more to a transfer, or if you wanted to bind the town more to a renewal that shall be renewed unless. You get into a little difficulty when you start having contractual rights to renewal when it can't exceed 5 years, so.
So
I was trying to keep the flexibility for the town, but it's your
What would
decision.
that look like if there's, say somebody has a 5-year lease and there's 3 years left on it and they're selling their house? Could they have something where they could?
They could come to the town and the town could approve the transfer and the new owner could sign up a document saying that the new owner agrees to abide by all the terms.
Is that something that could be put into our ordinance?
We don't, let me clarify that. At one point, we did have an ordinance on pier leases. We no longer have an ordinance on pier leases. That went away a few years ago for whatever reason. So there's no ordinance to change there.
No,
But-
so this is strictly the agreement we're talking about. There
Right,
is no ordinance.
right.
Okay.
This is all contractual.
So could it be added to the agreement?
It could be added to the agreement, yeah.
Okay.
If you want to add a specific procedure for that, that could be added.
Okay.
The
Thank you.
procedure currently, though, is that the new property owner comes in and signs a lease transfer.
Right, I mean, that's the way, otherwise, the new property owner doesn't have any rights to this. Town could tear down the pier if they wanted to.
Right, and there's never been a time in which that's been denied.
Right,
Correct.
that's my understanding.
Okay. Mr. Wood, I saw your hand.
Yeah, if I had my druthers, as we used to say, what I would like to see is, because we don't want to be punitive to the folks with the leases, but we do want them to take as much responsibility for it as we can. So I like the idea of if they do maintenance on the shoreline, that we give them some percentage of relief on the leases themselves. And then the other thing that I'd like to point out is that we've had inflation over 5% for the last 5 years. Okay, so yes, this is an increase over the last time, but it's not ridiculously so. Okay, but so when people get that sticker shock on that, and I ask them to remember that the entire while that they've been paying the one price for the lease, as they're entitled to, we've been paying 5, 6, 7% more for the things that we need to keep the town running. So as we discuss the fees eventually. I ask everybody to keep that in mind.
Okay. Any other general comments? Go ahead.
Question, when was the last time they were increased? Was that mentioned or?
5 years ago,
Just
yeah,
five?
the last
Okay.
lease time.
And are all the lease, are they current at this time, or do we have any delinquent?
There are some that are expiring right now.
Okay. And what is the cost to the town for all of these, that are ours? Do we have like a dollar amount, what's the cost to the town on these leases that we have with the piers? Do we know?
I think the cost would be staff time, lawyer time, attorney fees.
Yeah, I mean, it's the last time when the lease was approved, there was discussion by council, going back and looking at the minutes, that the charge was mainly for administrative time.
Administrative, okay. And did we know dollar-wise what that was, or no, it was just administrative costs?
Well, it was set at $250 a year
Okay,
at that time.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I was talking to a constituent today, and one of the questions that came up was, when they do a pier lease, what are they leasing? Are they leasing the access out to the pier and that's it? Or are they leasing the land? Because I know there was some discussion about like no parking and stuff like that, specifically on Monroe Bay side. But are they actually leasing the land, and is that considered their land, and they have to take all responsibility for maintenance and liability and everything, or how does that work?
They're leasing the spot of land, and they're able to build a pier, but nothing else on that spot of land that they're leasing. They're responsible for cutting the grass and general maintenance. The big maintenance question deals with the shoreline, but they're responsible for the other maintenance.
And so if they don't lease the pier and the spot across the street, the town has to maintain that?
That's the town's land, yeah,
Okay.
town would be maintaining it.
Okay. And one of the concerns I have is I noticed, like, for example, I know this isn't really the same exact situation, but I'm assuming it probably happens on the Bay side, just like it happens on Irving, over by the North Beach, specifically Boardwalk, where the American Legion built a pavilion, I guess, out there. And because from what I've been told, the jetties that go out there, basically the beach stops there, and everything up from that's getting eroded away. So my point is the impacts of what one homeowner does versus another. So is there any danger, like if the town relinquishes responsibility for maintaining the shoreline and leaves it up to individual homeowners, are we taking any risk of like losing part of our roadways and stuff because of the some maintaining and some not?
Well, they would have to come up with a plan. I mean, part of the new lease is to set out the details of what that plan is, and that would have to be approved by the town. And I'm sure consideration would be had as to how this might affect a neighbor's land or the other land that's not leased.
I'm assuming that would be recommended the town has a plan overall, not just for specific spots that are being leased.
That
but
would be
overall.
ideal, but
Yeah,
I don't think we have that. I'm not aware of that at the present time.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Wood?
So if, my understanding of leasing the pier, it's much like leasing a house from somewhere else. I mean, you're responsible for basic upkeep. There are certain things that you can and can't do as far as, you can only build the pier there. You can't build other things there. You don't have guaranteed parking spot there, do you?
No, I mean, we have an
Okay.
ordinance dealing with parking.
Right.
along
So
the roadway.
consequently, the lease is no different than any real estate lease for the most part. Is that a fair statement?
For the most part, I mean, it's leasing the land, and it's for a particular purpose, and it's a small piece of land, and the town can enter to inspect, and there are obligations on maintenance.
Right. But if they don't follow through on their
Right.
obligations, then we have recourse.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to tackle this in maybe specific pieces so that we can get somewhere on it, okay? So the first piece of it is inspections. So this is new to this lease, that there shall be an inspection required. Obviously, there is a cost associated to town, an additional cost that has not been happening to have inspections of all of these prior to the agreement. In that inspection language, it does say that the pier must meet the uniform statewide building code and be permitted with the Virginia Marine Resource Commission. I don't know how far those inspections are going to go in that. Are we having people go pull permits from VMRC to make sure these docks are, you know what I mean? Like, this could kind of go into a lot of administrative costs. Certainly $250 a year, which is what it was. I mean, a lawyer, any lawyer, Mr. Duggan, not just you, is more than $250 an hour. And we know we have spent much more time than that and due on each individual lease, really, even if it is boilerplate language, because you still have to go through and coordinate with the owner, and then finance has to, you know, collect payment, and lease notices have to go out. And I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. So I just want to tackle that point first about inspections. So we, yay or nay, or what some ideas on whether we leave this inspection language in there, and what does that mean?
Okay, when, as Mr. Wood just stated, you're leasing something, the town has the right to go in, check and make sure it's being kept. And when I said inspected, it is a case that it is ours still, but I'm not advocating that it be a burdensome cost to do an inspection. It can be yearly. It can be a cursory inspection where we make sure that it's still in there, but it's not to create a financial burden. It doesn't have to be a monthly inspection. We can set that term, but that was the original thought, to ensure that our collateral, what we have, because it is the town, that it is being, we can verify that it's being taken care of. So that was the original thought. But
There are two sections there. There's another one dealing with where we can go in there and inspect, but the added language really talks about an inspection to determine whether the existing pier or a new pier would create a material chance of erosion of the shoreline. So that's what the inspection is, to determine if there's any risk there.
And who would be qualified to give that kind of inspection?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, that's why.
It was
I
not
left it-
in the last lease.
It's not in the last lease
Okay.
specifically.
Okay, so I think we do still have the ability to have the inspection, to your point, for the town staff can go inspect the property or review it on an as-needed basis. But do we want to add this inspection for material, you know, about, is it going to create some sort of material erosion risk on each individual pier? Do we want to add that? And if so, are we hiring a building code inspector to do that? And who's qualified to do that? And, you know?
for clarity, do we currently have some kind of inspection going on?
What we have is some language that's not that strong, but basically it's sort of passive, that if there's a determination that there's the shoreline maintenance is required, then person shall have to develop a plan for shoreline maintenance, and that shall be attached as Exhibit B. It doesn't say who makes that determination, or it just, I'm not even sure it uses the word determination. They just say if it's found that shoreline maintenance would be required.
I want to be specific. That language about the inspection that's been added is which paragraph exactly? I didn't mark it. I read it earlier.
That's in the yellow.
Yeah, the number 5, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And, no, that's the incentive.
The initial requirement in option 2, so I guess it's under section shoreline maintenance optional provision incentives, and it goes into that
Yeah,
inspection part
I want to.
in the yellow.
Before we get to the incentive, though, it's some,
It says the inspector has improved the plan. Is that the one?
So when
Number
someone
5?
builds a pier, who validates it? Who inspects it then?
Yeah, I mean, that's under option one.
I'm like, physically, who inspects a pier that's being built?
Well, I think the county does.
Okay, so you rely that on the county to provide does the town issue a permit to build a pier and then go through the same process of building a house?
yeah, that doesn't really have anything to do with this lease option, though.
Well, I mean,
We have
it
that
satisfies
anyway.
your
Right.
need for an inspector to
Right.
validate something,
Yeah.
right?
One of the things that concerns me is if we start inspecting, okay, then A, there's a cost for that if we're going to do it in a way that we don't incur extra liability, okay? Because I think if I were leasing something and somebody inspected it, then it's de facto safe, right? And then the pier collapses, somebody gets injured. So in all honesty, as far as inspecting each and every pier, I think that adds a layer of cost and a layer of liability that I don't think we want any part of.
Yeah, I don't think we want to inspect the pier at all. I think we
Yeah,
rely that to the
that's my point.
building inspector to provide that inspection. And the town only handles the access, right, the land of access to that pier to ensure that there's no damage, there's nothing falling apart, that type of inspection, not the pier itself, because that's outside the bounds of our, realistically, if you build it out here, it's
I
outside the
mean,
bounds of the town.
To clarify, and Ms. Odom can jump in too, my understanding is that first they would have to have a zoning permit, and then as part of that process, she would verify that they have all the proper permits. Once a zoning permit is issued, then it would go to the county for a building permit for the pier. And she just indicated to me that the county does inspections for shoreline erosion. So I don't know how that would play into this.
So for current construction that we have, including a pier construction, the county is the erosion and sediment control program administrator for the town. And so the county also serves as the plan reviewer for erosion and sediment control plans that have to be submitted and for inspections. So we do currently rely on them for those inspections. So as part of perhaps an inspection process relative to the pier leases, we could either, if you set a certain time frame that they have to be inspected, we could coordinate that. The town could coordinate that with the county to look at the shoreline, or either
Okay.
we could inspect it, and if there's a problem, ask for that review by the county.
Okay, all right, I hear Mr. Larson's hand, then I'll go right back to you, okay?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about multiple different things when we say inspection, and we're kind of bouncing all over the place. Correct me if you see it differently, Mr. Bowman, but the one that we're talking about tonight, I think, is just the one that says that we will do an assessment as to whether there may be shoreline degradation because of a pier, and then ask for the plan, right? We're not talking about inspecting the pier, we're not talking about the follow-up inspections, we're just talking about this lease, and we may or may not ask the homeowner to do an erosion plan because we think there's a material risk of erosion. I think that's all we're talking about in the
tonight.
lease. All this other stuff is inspections that happen outside of the lease context. Am I right?
Well, I mean, we have the right to enter and inspect, but I mean, that's a general right.
Right.
This is a specific thing.
Yeah, that's the
dealing with
third
shoreline.
inspection, just to be able to walk on the land and make sure they're not abusing it in some other way, but, yeah.
So, yeah, that was my thing, and thank you for the clarity, Darla, because if it already has inspection in place through the county, and they do it, do we have current up-to-date where we can look back and say, oh, these were inspected on this day? Are they current, or are they being done? And like I said, I'm not looking for an intensive inspection. I am just looking that there's a cursory, as he said, assessment to, to determine that they're still safe and everything's okay. Because for me, My thing is, I am all about preventive maintenance than reactive maintenance, that's all.
So when I speak about the inspections that the county does for the town relative to erosion and sediment control, that is in relation to a land disturbance permit. So in the case of a pier being newly constructed, those inspections would occur to ensure that that property is stabilized. Otherwise, the inspections for erosion and sediment control, for instance, along a shoreline, and if there's, problems there, that's done on a complaint base. So I think in my understanding of how this would work for the pier leases is that there would still need to be a town person that goes around to identify, this looks just like it did, however frequently you do it. But if there's a complaint or if there becomes a problem that's seen, then we would involve the inspector through the certified program that operates for the town.
Okay.
To have that
So-
inspection done.
I want to get a little bit more specific to the actual lease so that we stay on topic in this. And so I think specifically, if you're looking at the second page of the lease in the yellow, which is listed as option 1, the very first sentence, required plan and implementation, the town manager, the town manager's designee, the inspector inspected the shoreline of the property and determined material erosion to the shoreline is anticipated as a result of construction, maintenance, or existing to the dock. I would propose to strike that entire sentence, as we do not have anyone qualified on staff to make those determinations. And it hasn't been in there in the past, and that doesn't absolve any of the other inspections that we've all talked about with when or when there's a complaint or when there's an issue, all of those inspections still happen, but just that additional piece of it. I think we've already had an issue with these pier leases being very difficult to implement, and we have to do them every 5 years, which ends up being a big haulover. I think adding that piece could create a lot more confusion, also non-compliance. There are people who will potentially not get a lease because of that. So that's just to put something on the table about that first item.
I think I want to disagree with the mayor on
Okay.
that, because the spirit of this, and this came up in the last meeting, was the worry about someone adding a pier that's going to cause erosion sort of down the shoreline for the next property owner who built the pier, 5 years ago. And this is a lightweight
Okay.
provision to allow the town to say, this could happen, so you have to do a shoreline maintenance plan. That's the
But to
heavy
your
lift.
earlier point, when they go to get a construction permit, that process does happen. And their county is involved, and an inspector is involved, and the shoreline maintenance, the sediment and erosion control from the county is involved in that process. So I don't know why it needs to be in the lease.
Yeah, the preponderance of what we're discussing are existing leases.
Right.
Okay, and so when, I think to the mayor's point, that when someone is building a new lease,
A new
then
pier.
that
Yeah.
inspection process is going to happen anyway.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Williams?
I like to keep things simple, so I kind of agree that I don't want to make the waters any muddier than needed, no pun intended. But
No dick.
I feel like, honestly, I like, the encouragements for people to maintain their properties and repair and put additional riprap and stuff, but I feel like that needs to be a bigger part of the whole plan for the town. Like, we need to have some sort of a plan in place for the entire shoreline Monroe Bay Avenue. I think Irving Avenue is in decent shape. We should probably have a long-term plan for that as well, but, so I don't know that trying to get too much into this pier lease is really the time or the place to do it. I think that's something we need to tackle as a whole. So that's why I sort of agreed try not to add any more inspections or make this more complicated. And if we start adding other inspections, that we could end up setting us up for more liability if we don't follow through and do what we put in writing.
I agree with Mr. Williams.
It might help if we go back to the language from last meeting. I'll read you what that says. It says, depending on the shoreline of the property, additional shoreline protection may be required to be installed on the property by the town and maintained during the term of the lease. Such additional requirements shall be itemized on Exhibit B attached here too, which is essentially what we have now, before I added the inspection language in. So if you want to go back to that.
Okay.
Simplify things.
Because of Darla's clarity where she says the county, we can partner with that. There is some kind of inspection there. At the last thing, I was under the understanding that there was. So that's why I said it's a cursory, not a burdensome inspection to create a fee and create administrative paperwork and personnel. So I got what you were saying. You gave me information I needed. Thank you for that.
Okay, so is there a consensus to go back to the prior language for that section, which gives the town the option to add a shoreline maintenance agreement, but not a requirement to do so?
Yes.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I'm seeing some head nodding.
Yep. I'm good.
Kenny, I see Maggie head nod. Okay, all right, so we're tackling that piece of it. Next up is the incentive piece. So, there was no incentive prior, to have an Exhibit B. You know, we haven't gotten to rate setting yet, but if we have a higher rate but have an incentive, which was, and that is paragraph 3, right, rent, right? And I think the incentive language was actually in paragraph 5, well, option 2, right? The option 2 language, we could agree to a percentage reduction if there is an Exhibit B. Is there, let's tackle that piece now. Incentive or no incentive? Yes? Yes, incentive for an Exhibit B?
I'm personally torn on that. Like I said earlier, I think we need a bigger plan, like an overall arching plan versus adding it to a contract.
Okay, so if there is an Exhibit B, no incentive then? Exhibit B is an optional shoreline plan by a professional.
Right, but Exhibit B is required if you find that there's material. So my incentive was more like you don't have to do it, but if you do something with the shoreline maintenance, you get an incentive. But you could do it even, you could give an incentive even if they have to do it.
Do we currently have anyone with an Exhibit B?
Not, no.
Okay, nobody. So all of them would be, at this point, if you wanted to do it, would, right?
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed what you,
So an Exhibit B currently exists in the lease as an option. If there's a material weakness at that point, they can do a shoreline management program with a professional engineer. That can be submitted as a part of the lease requirement. If somebody wanted to preemptively do it, which we have had people along, especially Monroe Bay Avenue, want to go ahead and get ahead of maybe some of these things, they would provide an Exhibit B. Would we like to have an incentive for that or not?
I think we should. If someone says, look, you know, I want to put in riprap, you said I didn't have to, but I want to do that, I think it'll stabilize the shoreline, can I have a break on the lease? Why wouldn't we do that? It seems like a very good idea to me.
How do we calculate the percentage? How much money they spend, or?
It's
I mean,
a,
It's at
right
the
now it's,
discretion of the town manager at this point. I don't.
no, this
sort
would
of-
have to be in the lease. So right now it's a percentage of the reduction of the rent of the lease. So we would set 50%, 100%, 10%.
So, again, how are we calculating that? If I put down a board and that shoreline gets secured, rather than somebody putting down, I'm using an example, like,
Yeah.
it's just dumb examples, but if I spend $50,
Yeah, no,
how are we calculating the percentage of what someone, is it someone spends to fix it? Or is it,
I think it's an Exhibit B, so it has to be an actual plan by an engineer, not a board that you fixed on your dock.
so if I do a plan,
Mm-hmm.
I get a percentage off of the thing, not a fix of the shoreline, but just a plan?
No, you have to implement the plan as a part of the lease, that's part of the
So-
Exhibit B requirement.
So what is the percentage off of, though?
Well, the total lease for 5 years is $2,000, and you're gonna pay more than that for an engineer just to give you a plan.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but if I spend $50,000
Right.
and put in riprap and do all this kind of stuff, and my lease is 5 years, am I gonna come back and say, I don't wanna pay anything for the next 50 years?
Well, no, I think in this lease, it's explicit, it's not up to the town manager. It says the town agrees that for the 5 years of this lease, the rent will be reduced by blank percentage.
But the blank is what Mr. Allison's asking about. How do we come to that number? And I think it's a valid point, and I think that's left to the discretion of whoever's negotiating the individual lease. Maybe we're not comfortable with that, but I think that's. what
Why would we
you're
leave
doing.
it up to that?
I would rather you put a percentage.
Yeah.
Because they're coming for a percentage.
Yeah, he wants an exact percentage, 80%, 100%, 50%. Yeah, this is not a negotiation between the town manager and the leasee.
That's tougher because the investment could be wildly different from one to the next. Yeah.
I don't see any investment that meets the requirements of this lease being less than thousands and thousands of dollars. So do you want the lease to be free, or do you want it to be half? If, as an incentive, we're talking about $2,000 for 5 years. So, do we want to incentivize it or not?
I think we should. As
Okay.
long as the town attorney doesn't think we're confusing, or gonna make it too confusing, or make it harder to manage these over time. Is it gonna be more expensive? Like, are we gonna lose money doing this?
No, I think it's just how the data is inputted with a person checking every year to see if the payment comes in. I mean, if the plan's approved as part of the lease, it will be attached as Exhibit B when the lease is signed. And so under that, they'll show that there's no fee due each year, or there's a 50% fee. So I don't think it'd be burdensome at all.
Okay, so, in that case, I'd
I think the
support up to
burden's on the
100%.
Yeah.
individual that is paying the money. I mean, if I'm paying $10,000 to shore up the shoreline for a piece of property that I don't own, I expect 100% of that money not to be paid.
Yeah, I'm hearing 100%. So is there agreement to the 100% incentive? If
As
you do
long
an
as it's over
incentive-
$2,000 of 5 years.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, yes.
Yes?
I would think that number should be slightly higher.
I mean, we can't give them money back.
Right, no, I'm not saying the discount, I'm saying the money that they need to spend. So if it's $2,000 for $2,000, that's not a fair trade.
There is no such time in which one of these erosion plans is going to cost less than
Correct.
$10,000.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So
Or
then
like 10
at
riprap.
100%.
Yeah, maybe $100,000.
Okay, understood.
Okay, so I'm hearing 100% and keep in the language about the incentive. You understand, you tracking still?
Yeah, I'll have to reword it some, but I got the essence. It'd be
Okay.
easy enough to do.
All right, and then I got, the next item was, okay, I remember when this came up before, 5 or 10 years ago, maybe it was the 10-year time frame, that in order, by the Commonwealth, in order to have a lease, you have to have defined points of what is being leased as real property. And so we defined that as an extension of the existing person's lot lines across, like as if they're, invisibly extended. And I believe we were requiring a plat,
Yeah, we're
a
requiring a
survey.
plat, yeah.
Okay, and so people who have existing leases with us will have already had that plat done. Anybody who builds a new pier will have to go get a survey done, which is about $2,500. So I just want to make sure that is still the case in this.
I don't believe I changed that.
Okay.
I don't see it right now, but I did not change that.
Okay, so the cost of doing one of these, if you already have one, the renewal cost is, just the regular fees. But to get a new pier, you have to also go get a survey and a plat. Okay, and then transfer rights. I know that was a topic Mr. Williams brought up. We've heard about it also, public comment. Is there any particular thing anybody wants to do about transfer rights? Right now, it is up to the town on transfer assignments, and it's solely to the town's discretion. Do you want to keep that like that, or do you want to
Do
change
you
it?
have a recommendation of a change?
No, I do not. Mr. Williams?
So I would just recommend that we have some language in here that whatever the lease is, that it transfers over to the buyer of the property for the remaining number of years or something possibly. I don't know what you think, Mr. Attorney.
And keep the condition that I think we need the new buyer to sign something for that transfer to take effect.
Yeah.
They need to assume all the obligations and liabilities of the previous owner. So we'll have a document for that.
Okay.
I can put that in there.
Thank you.
What recourse do we have if they do not sign it? Do we just,
The recourse is they don't have a right to the pier.
And they have to take it down in 30 days. That's in
Well,
here.
They wouldn't be the owner of that pier, so you couldn't really require me as buying the house across the street to tear down a pier that somebody else built.
well, that's
that
my
I didn't
point.
sign
If
the
they,
lease.
if they don't sign the lease and they say that the pier is no longer theirs, do they have to pay to have it removed, or
The
we have to?
leaseor, no, the person who signed the lease.
Yeah,
So
which
the
will be-
former owner of the
Uh-huh.
lot.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Has to
that'll never
remove
happen.
the dock.
So
you
then
don't
we've
put a
got to
lien
sue
on the
them
property
to
that
get
they
that.
don't own anymore.
Yeah, they would have to remove the dock. Mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Duggan, when somebody purchases a home, what's the obligations for the realtors to inform the people of the purchaser of the lease and how that all works? Is that explained usually pretty clearly legally?
I don't know what the realtors say. The one problem with this is that I don't think any of these leases have been recorded, or very few, if any. Some of the shoreline maintenance agreements that went for 40 years may have been recorded, but these 5-year leases, they don't have to be recorded in Virginia. So people will save the recordation costs and the burden, but recording is really the best way for the new owner from a title search, to see that there's a lease here. Otherwise, a realtor, just general knowledge, hopefully they have knowledge from being in Colonial Beach, that pier is not on your property. And when the person buys a property, they're only buying their land. They aren't buying any interest in this.
So they're not actually buying the pier?
No.
Really? So it's kind of abandoned almost in a way, if the new owner doesn't take it over. I mean, they would be foolish not to.
I mean, my thought, and I haven't researched this completely, but generally with the law, anything on real estate remains on real estate. It's part of the real estate. So if somebody puts a pier on real estate belonging to another, the other owns that pier.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, so right now there are, in here it says it is in the town's discretion to allow transfer of the lease to the new homeowner. The new owner shall be subject to all the terms and conditions. In no event may this lease be transferred to any person or entity other than the new homeowner. And that's so that the lease only can stay with the property that's associated to it. So we just want to leave that as is? I'm seeing head nods. Does anybody have a suggestion to change it, or we leave it as is?
You're saying it's already in there, the language to
That is in here on 6.
the transfer?
The only question I have is anybody going to be worried about the town discretion bit of it? Like, we decide We don't want to let it be.
It is now a
transferred to the
public
homeowner.
pier.
Right, yeah. It would just be a lovely place for a public pier.
I mean, somebody's already signed a 5-year lease. It's not like the town saying, oh, we're going to do something different than we'd already agreed on.
Well, I think what it means is if someone buys the house and doesn't renew the lease, then the town would take ownership of that pier.
But that's not what it
Technically.
says. Right, what it says is the town's going to
Sounds
decide
sole
not
dis-
to.
Yeah, sole discretion is what's in there now.
Sure.
Town could decide, no, we aren't going to allow transfer.
I mean,
What you
we
said is
consider
what we
that-
ought to do, but it's
Right.
not what the lease currently says.
Yeah.
Should we consider removing the language of sole discretion?
What if we added some of the language you suggested, but basically that the town conditioned on the new buyer, the home place, I think we describe it in here, signing an agreement to take on over the terms of the lease, the town shall assign the lease.
Has it ever been a problem?
I don't think it's ever been a problem, but I've only
So-
been here a few years, so.
I
but
like that language
doubt it.
better.
Shall, the town shall.
Yeah.
Okay, give them some, some protection.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm buying a house and I think I'm buying the pier as well, right? Or leasing the pier, and I go down there and I go, well, here's my $250. And they go, nope, sorry, we're not doing that anymore.
We changed our mind.
Right,
Right.
yeah, I don't think that should be good for the town or for the homeowner that's purchasing the home.
Okay, so are you clear on
Yeah, I'm
that
clear.
point?
I mean, personally, I agree with it, but I mean, that's your call, but.
Okay,
if I
so,
were,
okay, so the town shall transfer the rights to the new
Yeah.
owner. We're gonna put some protections in there. Okay, so just to recap from that, we have, we're not gonna add additional inspection language. We're gonna go back to the language of the former lease on that. We are going to provide an incentive if you do an Exhibit B for shoreline, for an entire shoreline maintenance plan, and you implement it, 100% reduction. The area that is being leased continues to be the extension of the lot lines as expressed in a plat or survey, and we will give transfer rights. That's where I'm at right now. And then the last point, I think, is money, the dollar amount. So it was $1,250 for 5 years. This version says $2,000 for 5 years, which is $400 a year. And I would say PAL has spent more than $400 talking about it right now. Okay, we want to keep that? I'm not hearing anything against it. Yes, Ms. Williams?
Yeah, I'm against a 60% increase.
What would you
Personally.
propose?
Maybe $50 a year. That seems to be more in line with cost of living. So it'd be $300 a year instead of $250.
So 300 instead of 400, because right now the existing language is $400 a year.
Correct, that's fine.
Okay,
Opinion.
all right, yeah, that's fine. So we can, let's make sure we give PAL clear direction. So, let's see where people feel about 300 or 400, so we can get to an actual number, so we can get a clear lease and get some approval, so staff can move forward on these things. All right, I'm gonna go this way?
Sure.
Okay,
Okay. In the spirit of compromise, I would go 350, but we've been looking at 5 years of inflation rates. They're more than that. And honestly, I don't think 400 is onerous, but in the spirit of getting something done, I would go with 350.
all right, Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Wood that I don't think 400 is onerous, but I don't want to quibble over $50, so I can buy into the 350 compromise if others can.
All right, Mr. Williams?
So the proposal was 300, and so this is 2 no's?
So right now, I'm just getting feedback, but
Okay,
yes, I think that they both have said they would settle at 350, so your feedback,
Okay, so 300 for me.
okay? Lisa?
My threshold from talking to four peer I am looking 250, max 3. So if 3 is not-
250 is what it was
It was.
last 5
So
years.
the 300, based on the notes from 4 pier owners, so 300.
Okay, Ms. Sanford?
I think we do need to increase it just because everything is being increased, so 350.
Okay, Mr. Allison?
I'm gonna go the 400.
Going to 400. Okay, honestly, I think 400 is a deal for getting an additional waterfront property in front of it. So I'm with Mr. Allison. I'm at 4, and I think it's still a steal. And I think we spend way more than that in lawyers' fees writing up 50 leases individually. Okay, but I heard 350, so that is more the consensus of the body. So I think, can the body come to something to tell Mr. Duggan so that we can have an actual lease? Are we, the consensus is at 350 right now, that's 3.
You have 3 votes for 350. So
That's
there's
it.
There's your
So,
answer, I
Mr.
guess, right? Well, we need 4, though.
Yeah.
Well, I know, we will need 4, so now we're gonna have to go, so 300 failed, right? And 2 had 400, that failed too. So we'll go at the 350 and see where we feel? I feel like an auctioneer.
That's kind of where we are, just trying to get it done.
Yeah.
350, it's not that big a difference, over $50.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna start on this side, Mr. Wood. All right, Lisa, the question is now 350.
I can live with that. We've labored long enough.
There we go.
350.
350.
400.
400, he says no.
350.
All right. Okay.
I'm sticking with the 300.
All right, well, we got 4 votes, so we'll stick with the 350 then. Okay. All right. Is that enough direction?
Yes.
Okay.
If you like, I'll bring it back at the next meeting, or if you trust me to make all these changes, I'll just do it.
I personally would like to see a clean copy of this,
Okay.
because we talked about a lot of
Okay.
things.
Okay. All right, so we're going to see a clean copy. We only have 1 meeting in July, so it will be the regular July meeting.
Okay.
I do anticipate that staff is waiting for this with bated breath. Yes, because we have leases expiring right now. Okay? All right, we're going to move forward. All right, so next up is our public hearing for the FAR. Thank you for being so patient. All right, I think we all know what the FAR is. That's up here because we have certainly brought this up many times. Darla, if it's okay with you, I think I'm going to go ahead and, do you want to intro where we're at briefly?
I was going to give you a brief update, just to let you know that this is something that is a zoning text amendment. It would add a definition of floor area ratio to Article 20 of the zoning ordinance. It would also amend the definition of private garage for clarity, and also to align with the proposal for the floor area ratio, which I provided this slide. I hope that you all can see that there are different colors. It looks like it's a little bit hard to see up here, but the garage, the front porch, and the rear porch would, based on the new definition of FAR as proposed, would not count towards the floor area ratio. And so I thought this would be a good example to show you. The floor area ratio would be all of the other parts of the building. So in this particular example, it's approximately 1,100 square feet of area that would count towards the FAR, which would allow them to then have a second story possibly, that would be about 900 square feet. So if you envision perhaps taking, because of the impervious cover that we have in town, taking those 2 bedrooms that are on the right-hand side of the floor plan, putting them on the second floor, there could be some other space on the second floor, approximately 900 square feet. And that would give you the 2,000 square feet of enclosed area that would be counted towards meeting the .4 FAR in the R1 and R2 districts. The garage, which is 525 square feet, would meet within the definition that's proposed in the ordinance for a two-car garage as a maximum of 576 square feet, so it does fall below that. And so this would be permitted. Again, the garage would not count. The front porch and the rear porch would not count towards the floor area ratio. I thought this might be a better, just an example, so everyone could see it and how it would apply on a plan like this. And unless you have any questions, that's all I was going to share.
Okay, I'm going to jump to the public hearing because I know we have people that have been waiting for this time. And so we will officially open the public hearing for this ordinance change at 8:35 PM. And Heather, you tell us who's up.
Mr. A.B. Walker.
Welcome, Mr. Walker.
Hello, I'm A.B. Walker, 514 Westmoreland Avenue. I'm here representing A.B. Walker and Sons Incorporated, local home builder. My son's here also, Andrew. We support this text amendment. It's been needed for a long time. It's hard to believe that we haven't had a definition, for the FAR all this time. And I think there's a pretty good consensus that it's needed, and I hope that you'll adopt it.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Eric Nelson.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, Council. I am a realtor in town, and I do work with a lot of, several builders. And I know that the builders that I work with would support this change in the definition of the FAR to exclude the garage. That apparently is not something that anybody else, any other jurisdiction that these builders that I work with are aware that any other jurisdiction does include the garage. So this seems like a logical thing to do, and I support that. I do want to just draw your attention to the fact, though, that when you set this FAR at 40%, so you're saying that for on a lot that's 5,000 square feet, which is the common size of the lots in the numbered streets, then you are saying that the maximum size of that house is going to be 2,000 square feet. The lots on the point typically tend to be bigger, 7,500 square feet. So what you're saying is that the houses that are built on the point are being given an advantage of being able to be bigger, more square footage than the houses in the classic shores. So you're sort of automatically setting up a difference in the value of the houses the potential value of the houses on the point versus the houses in classic shores. I just want to draw that to your attention. I mean, I support this change, eliminating the garage, but it does seem like the FAR itself can be applied in a way that sort of discriminates against the people who are buying houses on the classic shores. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Knuckles.
Yeah, hi, Will Knuckles, 204 Monroe Bay Avenue. With all due respect to my good friend, Mr. Nelson, I think that anytime we're looking at whether or not we have to have parity with the size of structures and have it work for all lot sizes, I think we're looking to have architectural differences that are going to be pretty pronounced in different areas. So if you're saying that you have to always be able to put the same size creation on variable size lots, I think that's an odd proposition. That's not usually how things that relate to spatial constraints as it relates to the total lot size. The general solution, including my own house, is if you want a big thing, at some point when somebody built it, they they get multiple lots, or they subdivide another lot, and, you know, each neighbor takes a lot and a half, or 2.5, or, you know, we've had ways of working this out in the future, in the past. I don't think this is exactly a great example as to why we should deviate from the policy that says, you know, if you have a large lot, you can naturally build a larger thing, and if a small lot is what you have, you might have to have multiples. But in the general, as the relates to the FAR goes, I think we're on an expedition that just never needed to happen. The FAR has been around for a while, but it wasn't really used, and then it sort of popped up that all of a sudden, you know, people were getting pushback about saying, oh, you can't do this on this size lot because, you know, we've run the FAR calculations and it's too big for what you're talking about doing. This seems to be in part because there was nothing reasonable for whether it's a corporation or whether it's an individual owner just building on their own lot to be able to pop down to the planning office and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you give me a worksheet that shows me the rules? Like, what's in, what's out? You know, how do you calculate this? Let me fill out the form, and you're done. But at different times, it's been, we don't look at the FAR at all, and then we do look at the FAR, and we include everything that's on the drawing, or we exclude things. Or when Mr. Dooley was here, apparently, he was including counting the garages and porches, and then he's gone, and we're not recently looking at that. My understanding is staff lately is looking as sort of, what's the status quo now, is like probably a covered porch counts, but a garage doesn't count sort of informally. I don't know if we change the ordinance is what I'm saying. What we need to do is tell the planning office to say, write down in a way that the public can easily digest how are you going to do this, right? What counts, what doesn't count, here's a form, and be consistent. We have a ton of turnover in terms of staff, and part of this is a lack of consistency and a lack of transparency with the public. So I think that's really the origin of why folks are complaining about the FAR, not because there's something inherently wrong with this, but about the fact that it just sort of has bounced around at times. I don't really know, and we don't have access to the last time we actually had a career staff planning director here to say, was this being utilized because we're trying to use this tool as a way of dealing with development footprint generally, and this was sort of a useful tool, or is it sort of like that tool should have never been used in the first place? We have sort of no background as to why this was being applied or not being applied. But I think that the moment now is, I don't think you have to do anything other than to suggest to the planning office through the town manager to say, please write this down in a way that people can understand, give them a simple form, be transparent about it, and don't change it week to week. Because that level of inconsistency is certainly maddening to the building community, and I presume even at an individual level would be really hard to deal with. So I think you have the solution. This was talked about at the planning commission level too, about the fact that like there's the tool to already fix this. They just need to fix this sort of at an administrative level. So it's been discussed openly in public meetings. Again, if you had minutes, you could read them, but you don't. It's another thing that I raised earlier, right? And another one of those problems with not actually documenting what actually happens in these public dialogues. Not only just from the public, but actually from the appointed people that are supposed to be advising you. You have no way to go look this up other than if you're actually at the meeting. So, but that's what I saw in person when I was at the stakeholder meetings and I was hearing some of the things that were coming from the builders, is to say part of why they're upset is because they're just not being conceded consistently and fairly in a way that is transparent and that they can understand no matter whether they're going to come in, last year or this year or next year. So I don't, in this sense, I don't know that even the ordinance change is going to fix that if the problem is lack of transparency and lack of consistent application to whatever your rules are. So I think that's really where the driver ought to be. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Come on up. You have to state your name and address again.
Yes, Terry Gasterland, 1317 Irving Avenue, and 151 Seacliff Way, Del Mar, California. You're speaking to one of my favorite things, FAR, lot coverage and building height, and how does that fit on a lot? Yes. So here's some of the questions that come up. Would a detached garage count toward FAR, yes or no? Question one. Is the current FAR calculated as a box that would be lot coverage times allowed height? Or I'm just wanting to understand kind of the current FAR calculation. In Del Mar, a porch with walls on 3 sites would actually count. So I applaud not counting it here. Let porches be porches. And then if a person has a garage and does an ADU conversion, does that now count or not count? That may be part of your ADU ordinance. And if you have a second-story living area over a garage, if the garage is detached, it's by definition a separate living space. Does that count or not count? Or if it's an attached garage and it's a separate living space, does it count or not count? And if it's an attached garage and it's an extension of the primary house, does it count or not count? Those are just some of the questions that came up as I was looking at your matter before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we are going to close the public hearing at 8:44 PM. Generally speaking, we do a public hearing and then vote at the following council meeting, at the regular meeting. I know this is a regular meeting, but in July, we don't have a work session. So I don't know if we can have discussion now, or we can.
I would really be for discussion and taking action tonight, if I can expand upon my reasons for that. We've been trying to get this done for a while. I've spoken with any number of builders. I think when we talked about this among ourselves, it was kind of a no-brainer in that all we're really talking about is taking a detached garage and allowing you to put it attached to your house. It's not additional living space. It allows the builders to build more attractive lots in the areas. So I don't see a reason to delay. So that's my thoughts on that.
Okay, so you would like to propose to make a motion?
Yeah, I will make a motion that we vote on the FAR as recommended by the planning commission, so that the attached garage is not counted.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion before we discuss it?
Second.
Okay. All right, so now that motion is up for discussion. The motion is to adopt it as recommended by the planning commission. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Williams?
I have heard this discussed many times, and also was at the planning commission liaison, heard the discussions throughout last year. So I don't really have any major concerns with passing it tonight. I would like some clarification from Darla, or see if, as part of the stipulation of passing this, if council could also provide direction to the town manager to have the zoning administrator actually do a write-up on this, so that builders have very clear direction on what the FAR is and how it's calculated, so that there is no confusion at all from the builders in the future.
Go ahead, Ms. Darla.
Yes, sir, Madam Mayor, thank you. Yes, ma'am. What I wanted to respond to that is to say that one of the reasons, or the reason, for codifying the definition of FAR is so that there is no longer the action in town by former employees to either enforce it or not enforce it, or have a different interpretation of what that may be or what it's not. That's the reason for the ordinance amendment. It would require, if it's adopted, the next person who comes in, who's the zoning administrator for the town, would have to follow the same rules. So the rule would be set by this ordinance amendment, and everybody would have to follow it. I don't have a problem at all preparing, some sort of flyer or, that could be handed out to folks so that it would be clear, similar to, what's shown here. If this would count, that wouldn't count, but it won't change as the future goes forward unless there is another ordinance amendment. So that's the purpose.
Is there any objection from the rest of council to direct the town manager to get that, provide that for the council, so we can review?
What are you asking for to be provided to the council?
I'd just like to ensure that that we have something in writing that clearly defines for all builders in the future, and any zoning administrator that may take over for Darla in the future, that it's clearly written out how they calculate the FAR, and so there's no confusion.
Isn't that the definition of FAR on attachment 1?
I don't know. I feel like it still could be,
He's asking for a cheat sheet to be provided, which could be separate from what we're doing here. It just can be direction to the town manager.
Oh,
I just
okay.
don't want this
Yeah,
to
like a
slip through the
pamphlet.
cracks,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so, that sounds kind of administrative. Is that's just a administrative request?
Yeah, I'd just like see if I could get council support to do that as part of the vote, just to get.
Okay, so as part of the discussion, is there, support for having a pamphlet of clarification, administrative?
Honestly, the ordinance is the clarification, but if it gets us done, let's do it. Darla, do you have a problem creating the cheat sheet?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm not seeing any objection to it, so I feel like you got consensus by silent, or, by nod, right? Okay, so we'll make sure that we get the information out there clearly. I will say several builders have been involved in the process from the planning commission standpoint. So hopefully all you guys have an understanding at this point of what this definition is. I'm kind of dubbing you a liaison to all the rest. Uh-huh. Okay, just want to make sure that's clear. Okay, all right, so we have a motion on the floor. Are there any other discussion for the motion on the floor? All right, seeing none, I'm going to take a vote. This is an ordinance change. I'm going to do a roll call. I'm going to start down here with Ms. Grandstaff.
I'm in favor.
Okay, Ms. Sanford? Aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Wood? Aye. Mr. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Got it done. All right. Excellent. Next topic, taxing authority. This is a tax contract. We have tax already for real estate. This is to add them as collections on personal property taxes. Ms. Oaks?
Good evening. Yes, as the mayor stated, we already use tax to do our real estate collections, and we're just asking tonight to have your approval to engage them to do our collections for personal property. We've had them engaged in real estate since the beginning of fiscal '23. We have had great success with them. They do not charge us for their service. All of the fees that they get for their services are passed on to the consumers who have delinquent taxes. So it costs us nothing, and we reap the rewards. We have had great success. I did a little bit of estimating on the real estate. We went from averaging 120,000 to 140,000 in collections with our efforts. The first year, we collected 253,000 with tax doing the collections. And right now, we're already at 215 collected for delinquent real estate this fiscal year. So they pretty much almost doubled what we were able to do with our limited resources. So we're right now estimating about $23,000 a year in personal property delinquent collections. So I'm anticipating to hopefully at least double that number, or if not more, by letting tax take over and do those collections. Is there any questions?
Mr. Wood?
Yeah, I think it was Mr. Long who made the suggestion, and this honestly doesn't deal with what we're working with today, but is it possible that we might be able to look into collection on utilities as well?
Yes, we can. Utilities have a few different rules to go by, but we can, but kind of one piece at a time. Yeah, like I said, we had a lot of success with real estate. I want to see what kind of success they'll have with personal property.
All right, is there a motion to approve that tax contract be extended to personal property collections?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any, we got a lot of seconds. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, so I think, I'm sorry if I missed it, Lisa, you mentioned, I think in our one-on-one meetings that there's no cost to the town, correct?
There is no cost to the town.
And they just take what, a percentage or
No,
They charge
there
a
are
fee to
certain
the
fees
they
that
charge
they
a fee.
charge for their services to the consumer. The person who has delinquent taxes, they charge collection fees, lawyer fees, things like that. It's all passed on to the delinquent taxpayer. And we give them a list of how much they owe us, so we get 100% of the tax that's owed to us, once they've finished their collections.
Okay. And is there any difference between personal property and real estate as far as?
There are
legal-
some difference in
legal
rules.
consequences, or?
What you can do, you can't sell property, well, you can sell personal property, but there's a long process before you can get to that point. This company works with, they also will work with payment plans for people. We had looked at two companies. The other one was too aggressive for our citizens. We thought they were, knock on your door, give you a letter, and then boom, put a boot on your car and tow it away and sell it.
Whoa.
This company here will do letters, contact, discussions, then they would go to putting liens on your vehicle or your bank account, whatever means they have. We've already instructed them, we really don't want them seizing and selling property. I think that's just a little bit too much. But it is something we could do. Just like in a tax sale, we will sell your house for your overdue taxes. There is a little bit of difference, but they've had great success using the model they use. We're seeing what they can do for us.
Okay, that's interesting. Is there something in the state statutes that allows them to do the liens and stuff? 'Cause
Yeah,
I was-
there are Code of Virginia, we've got a lot of things in the Code of Virginia. And the staff just doesn't have the time or the personnel to do the things that they do, or some of the resources they have. They have access to state sales tax, they have access to phone number information. They've got all these other resources that they have that we can't get or don't have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a motion with a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next up, this is the amendment and appropriation, our return of the ARPA funds from the DEQ reimbursement grant. And this is just to put it in the ARPA. This is not any next step about what to do with it.
Nope. We originally got the ARPA funds during COVID, and one of the decisions council made was to use those funds to fund the central drainage area project. Then we were able to secure a grant through DEQ. So as part of that grant, they agreed to let us use the grant money toward that CDA project, even though it had already been started and almost near completion. So this is the reimbursement from DEQ for their grant for the money we spent on the central drainage area project. And since that money came out of the ARPA fund, we were just having to ask, this is money we're getting in the bank, we need to put it somewhere, let's put it back into the ARPA fund so council can make decisions on how to use those funds.
Okay, is there a motion on the table to have the fiscal transfer?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's okay. Is this fund, the ARPA fund get investment? My gosh, Lisa, help me.
Yeah,
here.
so you have to understand how things, most of our funds, our money is sitting in a pooled cash account. So that covers general fund, ARPA funds, school funds, Yes, and that money is being invested, and we get interest on that money.
Thank you. I just know that question might come up later, so.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion about the resolution in front of us right now? Mr. Williams?
Is there any expiration date? I know on the original ARPA funds, there was an expiration date. Is there?
No, because we filed the exception with the Treasury, Department of Treasury. We have no obligation to the federal government this money. This money is now town council discretion, how they want to use it.
Okay, thank you.
Can we change the name from ARPA funds to something else, since it's not technically ARPA funds
Yeah,
anymore?
I did think about that. I'm open to suggestions. I don't know what else we could call it at this point.
Do you have a suggestion for
Yeah, I
what
got a
you would like to
suggestion.
call it?
I think it's misleading at this point that we've
I
kind of
do
spent
too.
all the ARPA funds, and now we're replenishing it, and it gets confusing of what that means, and like your point, does it expire, like, there was an expiration on the original stuff, so it's like, just kind of like rename it to something else, so it's not confusing to people when we talk about specific funds that are being spent for something, that's all.
DEQ reimbursement.
Well, it has a
No,
little bit
because
more
there's
money
still
other than
ARPA funds
that.
in there.
Yeah, I think it's more like a general term.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, I have
I mean,
not
it doesn't have
thought-
to be changed today, I'm just saying, like, I think we should probably change the name to something else, so it's not confusing to everyone.
I agree. You know, because at this point, that term is really getting,
Yeah, yeah, okay. All right, we're gonna, I'll let the two of them come up with a name, okay? We'll bring it back for us.
open to suggestions.
Okay, is there any other discussion on the motion in front of us? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No? All right, moving along. All right, next up. Lisa, you're on this one too.
Yes, ma'am, I am.
All right, read
All
us
right,
into this one.
so, want to lead into this. This is, we're asking for $500,000 to replenish the wastewater treatment plant fund. We have been, had unexpected costs we had to do. Bowman Consulting was one of them, one of the big ones. I don't know if Heather has my little breakdown. Oh, Chris does. So, and the cost of chemicals gone up. The extra testing we have to do, is that Mid-Atlantic? Extra testing because of our consent order. The penalty we had to pay to DEQ and the QIF assessment that we had. These were things that weren't budgeted. So we've been keeping an eye on this, and I know it's been discussed in other meetings regarding the costs of the wastewater treatment plant operations. The last time I brought it to council tonight, it was the May 21st meeting, where I was talking about we had shortfalls in the budget. We've been waiting to present this resolution so we could shore up those numbers, get some final numbers, so we're not back here asking you, oh, now we need this much money for wastewater treatment, now we need this much money. So this is kind of wrapping it up for the rest of the year, what we're going to need to keep this fund from being in a deficit situation.
Okay, and the funds are coming from?
They're coming from reserves, which is your fund balance, and I've got some numbers here, so I was asked about these. Currently, I know you know that Davenport talks to us all about, you know, our fund balance and our capacity for debt and our fiscal policy. So right now, there's like $7.5 million in the sewer funds reserve, or fund balance, as it's called. So the 500,000 will take us down to 7 million. Now, we are supposed to keep 50% above our operating expenses, and this is like right at that 50%. So we're still within our financial policy. This is not going to break the sewer fund. And as you know, Davenport and ourselves are working on a plan to fund our CIP and these other expenses that the wastewater treatment plant is going to need. So that'll be coming in upcoming meetings. So this is just to get us through fiscal '25. Some of the shortfalls we've been experiencing throughout the year. And like I said, we just wanted to shore those numbers up so we're not back here asking for money every other month or every month.
Too big, Heather, too big.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, I can finally see it.
So like I said, these were some of the fees, you know, Bowman, we did not have Bowman budgeted at all. It was something we needed to do for the consent order. In Bowdoin, because we used some of the money to pay Bowman, we have 2 more payments to make to in Bowdoin. And as we say, they're still operating at 24, and that wasn't anticipated. Mid-Atlantic is our testing company. Those extra tests we now have to do per our consent order. And you see the 2 penalties there. The last 2 are sludge disposal. Those costs are going up. I know that Tim Trivet mentioned something about that. And our chemicals, we need more of them, and they're more expensive what we need to use. So unanticipated, but we're hoping this is we've got fiscal 26's budget.
And if I recall, when we set the financial policy, we purposely set the financial policy in the sewer reserve higher than other localities because of our concerns with the wastewater plant. I feel like I had some discussion about that.
Both water and sewer is set at 50%?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that still leaves us a good amount of capacity if we needed it.
Okay, let's see if we have a motion and a second, and then we'll have some discussion. How about that? We have a motion on the floor does anybody want to make a
So
motion?
moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so now it's open for discussion. Any other?
Yeah, I do have a question for the town manager,
Yep.
if I may.
Go right ahead.
So these are funds we've already paid, right? This is money that has already come out of our pockets, correct?
Correct, and some of them, we have outstanding invoices that we're still waiting on receiving,
Okay.
but yes.
So it's not as if we have a choice. Secondly, what is going to prevent us from being in the same situation at the end of this fiscal year?
So we've allotted for these expenses in this budget that was previously passed.
Okay. And last question for you, John. If we hadn't done these things, where would we be right now?
Oh, you would be in a lot more trouble. Your fines would be higher. They probably would take the plan away from you.
Thank you.
I do suggest that anybody go over to the plant and tour it I asked a lot of questions in the budget process about particularly the sewer budget. Of course, you know, we had to raise the rates, and that's very serious, and I take that with a lot of responsibility. And going over there to have a full understanding of the chemicals, the cost of the chemicals, the amount of the chemicals, why chemicals were not being used in that way before, the changes in policy of how that operates. It's a pretty big education, to be honest with you. I'm still learning, but it's worth taking some time over there. Ms. Williams?
Yeah, I just have some concerns. I mean, 500,000, that's $500,000. All to be thrown at us at the end of the year. If we've been incurring these costs throughout the year, I'm just concerned that we're just seeing them now at the last hour of the fiscal year. So I do have a little bit of concerns there. I'm just seeing these numbers for the first time tonight. And so I haven't really had time to digest all this. And I'm not 100% sure what this means for the future of the wastewater treatment plant. I'd like to actually get a little bit deeper in the overall expenditures and see, because I'm concerned that this is going to happen again next year, because we weren't warned about this last year. I mean, maybe we did have some inclinations that things were going up and we were incurring costs, but $500,000 all at once just makes me a little bit nervous for the future.
I'm going to say that the Davenport financial report from April 2nd, it did already annotate that there was a negative balance in the sewer fund in April.
And May's meeting, right before the budget vote, those shortfalls were brought to council's attention. At least I know I did that during that budget constraint presentation.
Okay, is there any other discussion on the motion on the floor? Okay. Do I need to do a roll call? It's a lot of money, although I did just do $2.5 million appropriation on an aye vote, but that one was pretty straightforward. I'll do a roll call this time. Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Nay.
Okay. Ms. Grandstaff?
Nay.
Okay. Ms. Sanford? Aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
And aye. Okay. All right, we don't have a closed meeting, so that's all I